know, Myth, I almost regret saying it, but you've been killing it. Your chair ads are on point.
I'm a creative genius, the likes of which the universe has not seen until this point, Dave.
I feel like I do have to ask, though. There's no way it's just you.
Who else would it be?
I don't know. People have helpers, ghostwriters even. You got a ghostwriter, Myth?
Are you accusing me of needing help in the creative process?
I sure am.
Well, I don't.
All right, good enough for me.
Whee! You got the next chair ad? Okay, yeah. Aggro, Eiffel State Building Tower. He's picking his nose. Yeah, we're gonna sell so many chairs.
You know, Mifflin and I were having an argument the other day about who really is the chair ad guy. And Lermy already posted about this because Smite World Championship Hera has the quote about the guy who makes all the chair ads, and clearly it's about me.
What?
Is what we've determined. Miff, I set the stage all year long last year. I opened the door to chair ads. You stand on my shoulders. And you don't even do it yourself. You have a ghostwriter. That
What?
video
No, I
proved it.
don't.
But here, through it all, through the ups and downs of the creative process that I've gone through and Miff hasn't had to struggle through quite yet, one thing has stood above all the rest, and that is the quality of the chairs that we are pitching to you guys. The Maxonomic Smite chair, bar none, the best chair I've ever sat in. And so you should grab one for yourself as well. Go on over to that link down there and grab yourself a Smite-themed Maxonomic chair. I promise you won't regret it. Miff does join me now, though, and I'm not going to give him a chance to defend himself because why would
you?
I'm just right. Miff, we move on to our second matchup of the day here, and what should be a pretty fun one against two number one seeds, the winners from their respective playoff events.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this one. I think SLEEKNESS is just this dark horse contender that has been struggling throughout the year. They've gone through numerous just roster changes. All of a sudden, they're looking a lot better. ELYSIUM has had the opposite trajectory. They have been dominating throughout the year and continue to do so. So I'm really excited. ELYSIUM
might just be the best Game 2 team we've seen so far throughout this year. Game 1, maybe throw it by the wayside, but Game 2 through...
They don't lose those.
3 or 4, depending on how long the set is, ELYSIUM shows up. The winner of this matchup gets to go on and face the Jade Dragons, so that's a big thumbs up. At least you're not playing against the Leviathans, I guess, is what the quote number 2 seeds had to do in our first matchup of the day. And remember, the gravity behind this set cannot be understated. ELYSIUM versus SLEEKNESS, this is a knockout round. Everything else from here on out, outside of the other knockout matches, but you have a little room for error after this. But between ELYSIUM and SLEEKNESS, Miff, winner goes on to face the Dragons, loser ends up going home, and their Smite World Championship run is over. Now, we've talked about ELYSIUM and how Game 1 sometimes is not their forte, but Games 2 and 3, if it's a best of 3, or 2, 3, and 4, if it's a best of 5, are some of the best that we've seen so far this year in the SEC, Miff. I mean, this is a roster built up of ex-Pro League talent. Some world champions are in there. Tarim adapting Angry, Trix Tank, and Spudio. Plenty of name recognition there. Might just be your favorites here in this matchup.
ELYSIUM as well has got a distinctive European style in that they are very comfortable waiting for the late game if that's what they're forced to do, but maybe a little bit differently from the rest of the European SEC. I think this is a team that is also capable of playing that early game, getting aggressive, getting proactive, looking towards objectives and invades consistently throughout the match, and that was one of the failings we saw in the last set. The European team struggled to deal with that patented early game North American just early aggression. I don't think ELYSIUM is going to have that same level of struggle. They've got plenty of talent from the SPL of past, as you already highlighted. I'm sure Adapting has had plenty of experience playing against these North American aggressive brawlers. So I've got high expectations for ELYSIUM. It's just whether or not their style is going to transition perfectly to this more North American pacing.
Right, and that's a question I guess we somewhat answered in our first set where, I don't know, the Winter Dogs really controlled set number 1. There was some pushback, of course, from the Captain Odie fan club, but the more aggressive style ended up winning the day in games 1 and 2, and then maybe just a better sieging comp turned things around in game 3. This is now a team that is dominant at the EU style of play. And again, Captain Odie Fan Club made a fantastic run through the EU SCC playoff event. They're an SOC team. But ELYSIUM has dominated with this style of play. So can the dominant, slower, more methodical EU play style overtake the play style of SLEEKNESS, who subscribe more to the in-your-face, aggressive North American play style? Remember, this is your number 1 seed coming out of the North American side of the SCC tournament. Chronic Oath, Nehu, Quig, and Dude Man Bro 429, who had a fantastic run at that playoff event over in North America. Maybe a chip on their shoulder. I don't know if that's the right way to describe it. Playing with a little something spicy. Not as clean cut as this ELYSIUM team, but they kind of have that wild look in their eye. If we could, see the look in their eye, I imagine it'd be a little bit wild. Because this SLEEKNESS team is a lot of fun to watch.
They really are. They're no stranger to the unorthodox picks as well. In particular, their support. Quig has been known to go towards whatever he feels like. Generally, it's the E-set out of support as well. So I'm expecting some pretty fancy stuff from them. Worth noting, their current coach, Renjaro, has not been with this team for an incredibly long time. I think he's coming up on 3 or 4 months into his career with this squad. Beforehand, it was Oceans playing with this team. That is now the coach for the Tartarus Titans, and I've had a chance to speak with Oceans about SLEEKNESS. He was very invested in their run throughout the SEC so far, and he said, look, man, they're just doing everything that I was saying to do while I was there, and they weren't doing it. Now they're doing it, and they're winning, and he was just raging out. But to speak to his credit, SLEEKNESS has adapted some of the stylings that I would associate with the Tartarus Titans. Not so much insofar as picks, but kind of in where they decide to allocate their pressure, how they're getting aggressive, how they utilize the leads. It's very similar to what we've seen from that top-seeded SPL team. So I'm expecting more of that style from SLEEKNESS, and that's the styling that moved them from nearly the bottom of the 4 in the SEC all the way up to first seed.
That's right.
This team, they've been on a resurgence, and they've been looking great.
That's such a great point, Nick. You have to talk about the resurgence of this team. And you mentioned how it happened. Maybe it took a little while to take some of the coach's suggested strategies into account, but they have internalized some of that and are externalizing it onto the playing field. This becomes such an interesting matchup where you're looking at ELYSIUM in the EU SEC all year long. I joke slightly about the difficult game number 1s that ELYSIUM have, but you're taking ELYSIUM against the field in the EU SEC.
100%.
Now the meeting of the minds between North America and EU just keep things so interesting. Picks and bans were very interesting in game 1. I hope, Mifflin, they continue to be interesting as we move into set number 2. ELYSIUM up against SLEEKNESS. And I think, we talked to Benny Q in the post-game interview, and he mentioned that it was easy for him to kind of pick some of the eclectic style picks because they just left Benny Q's pick. The Winter Dogs left Benny Q's pick up to the last pick every single time, and that allowed him to play some of the weird stuff that slotted into the draft very well. You wonder if that's something SLEEKNESS might consider doing with Quig, if he likes playing some of those off-meta supports. Maybe you allow him to counterpick a little bit, though you might have to get those picks on board a little bit earlier. There might be a chess match to be had here in picks and bans for ELYSIUM up against SLEEKNESS. Ganesh and Daji will both take a seat here, Miff. Ganesh, of course, receiving some changes here recently. Had some value before that, but maybe feeling a little bit better. Knockback immune when he is putting out that silence. And then a Bacchus will round out the bans here for SLEEKNESS. They're taking some of that aggressive, maybe a little bit later in Ganesh's case, support style of play off the board. But Camazotz continues his reign of terror so far here in our first day of Worlds qualifiers.
Yeah, I think Camazotz just fits the meta so well right now. That aggressive style play, the ability to just scale incredibly well into the late game. We saw it from Kirmi in that last set. It was slow rolling for Camazotz throughout the early, and then he got Mannequin Hidden Blade, and all of a sudden he was dominating team fights completely on his own. So you can expect a similar trajectory for ELYSIUM on this side. Worth noting, though, that Camazotz does have a fair bit of flex potential. This isn't necessarily adapting bound. It could head over into the soul lane, so keep your eyes on the rest of ELYSIUM's draft, whereas SLEEKNESS, they're not hiding too much. This Erlang Shen, very likely going into the jungle. This Hachiman, I believe, really only can go towards that long lane.
I hope so.
I don't want to see him in mid. I don't want to see him anywhere else.
Yeah, mid would be the only other place where I wouldn't immediately be tilted. I don't know, jungle Hachiman.
I'd be pretty mad.
So you'd be mad anyway, but jungle Hachiman would probably make you more
tilted.
mad, right? That's what I'm trying to get at here. Erlang Shen, Hachiman likely staying right where they are. Nike as well, and we saw a little bit of the Chronic highlights in the highlight reel that we had for SLEEKNESS. Chronic played a big role and the success that Sleekness had throughout the North American SEC playoffs, this Nike pick had been very strong for Chronic, and so that's something I imagine we'll see in the first couple of games here. If it ends up really getting out of control, then maybe ELYSIUM consider taking that one away. Camazotz and Ardio Myth, something we've seen plenty of already here so far today. Geb, at least picks-wise, has gone a bit by the wayside. ELYSIUM finding some value for Trix Tank here early in the draft.
Aggro isn't here today, so I'll carry his torch for just a moment. Can't believe Geb got through. That's the best god in the game. All right, we got it out of the way.
Does he say that?
Yeah, he does. He thinks Geb's like the
Not
tops.
Zeus anymore? No, he loves Zeus, but doesn't necessarily think it's the best.
Yeah, he thinks Geb's the best, though.
Got it.
He's wrong.
Speak of the devil.
Before the nerf, I think it was Terra. Terra might be a little bit lower on the old power rankings now that you can't do the clap dash anymore. But now in seeing the top 3 from ELYSIUM, you get a little bit more clarity on where this Camazotz is going. It is very likely going to be Geb out of support, Ardio in the soul lane, and Camazotz in the jungle, which, very similar to what we saw in the last set, does leave that mid selection up till the last picks, which gives you a little bit more of that counter pick potential. And that's exactly what you want when you're dealing with a god like Zeus on the other side. You really need to pick something that can avoid that chain lightning, that can close gap, deal with that lightning storm as well. We'll see where ELYSIUM goes.
We spoke it into existence, Myth. We spoke the Zeus out onto the playing field. Yeah, I did. Zeus was, obviously Zeus received some changes as a god in general that made Zeus feel better. But then it felt like Book of the Dead synergized pretty well with Zeus. That second effective health bar of shielding. Of course, Book of the Dead received a slight nerf, slightly lower on the shielding. Still have seen Book of the Dead already today. It was in a loss on a Tiamat. Maybe works still well enough with Zeus that we'll end up seeing that moving forward. Builds remain to be seen. J-Mac and Gourmizer will take us through those plenty during the cast. Aphrodite hovered alongside the Ho-Yi here, Myth. And I'm looking at a Camazotz, Ardio, Geb. And I'm pairing an Aphrodite with any of those 3. Very difficult characters to kill, become a lot harder.
And already the Camazotz had a decent matchup into the Zeus. You drop Lightning Storm, he goes into Bat Out of Hell. All of a sudden, you're avoiding all that damage. Put a Pocket Aphrodite on him. He's already getting the self-sustain from Vampiric Bats. Now he's getting the Lovebirds, as well as damage immunity from Undying Love. That dive potential on a Zeus is going to be so hard to deal with. But you brought up lightly the nerfs that we saw towards Book of the Dead. I'm going to blanket statement say this. Book of the Dead is still incredibly strong. It still might just be the best mage build. Because, 5% less shielding, I'm not concerned. All right, it was already my entire HP bar with, Breastplate of Valor and Book of Thoth on its own, stacking up the mana. I don't think the changes that we saw are really going to affect it too negatively. I think maybe more so interesting for mid-mages is how the Pen Shriek got buffed. Obsidian Shard's a lot better, Spear of Desolation better as well. So it's going to be more of a, where do I want to go with my value? Is it going to be all damage? Is it going to be all utility? That's really the decision-making. It's not so much that Book of the Dead is just straight up weaker, even though it is slightly weaker.
But Zeus probably feels good with both. I mean, damage is great on Zeus.
I think he's going Book of the Dead.
Survivability is great on Zeus. Yeah, Book of the Dead still maybe edges that one out. E-Set ends up being locked in here, Myth. Quig getting the Benny Q treatment. It's not the mid laner, it's the support who plays the weird picks, and Quig is going to leave his pick open to the last one in the draft. Do you feel like, this is far from unpredictable, I think, right? ELYSIUM know the styles of picks that Quig likes to play. Still a bit of a wrench in the mix now towards the end where E-Set, we've seen Feast or Famine. We've seen the feasting E-Set in support. We've also seen the Famine. Do you think that this pick fits in well with the rest of the Sleekness draft?
Looking at how slowly this ELYSIUM draft plays with Geb and Aphrodite on your team, you're really waiting for some of that scaling to start working its way through. Geb, one of the weakest 1 through 5 laners in the game. E-Set establishes pressure incredibly well. Rollout going to be canceled just about every single time by Dispel Magic. I really like how this E-Set fits into the draft. And how has Sleekness played around this pick in the past? Since they tossed it on support, they jam down Gold Furies. They are running them down throughout the early game. And looking at ELYSIUM, one of your best early game bullies is likely going to be Ardio. She's in the soul lane. She's probably not there for the Gold Fury fight. Geb is going to take a long time to get some defensive capacity to his name, so he's very weak throughout the early, as is Aphrodite. You're really relying on Camazotz to find picks. Ho-Yi doesn't really get that much pressure on his own. This could be a game where Sleekness wins through dual lane pressure and transitions it into Gold Furies.
That's right, and so maybe a bit of a headache for adapting early in this game, deciding where to play some of that pressure. Erlang Shen maybe with a bit of a different mindset here. Sleekness versus ELYSIUM. Game 1 right now.
Yeah,
going right into game number 1 of the second set here. It's ELYSIUM and SLEEKNESS, and already action over into the solo lane. Apologies for coming in a little bit late into it, but we get to jump right in. It's J-Mac Tucker, it's Gore Miser here, and Dude Man Bro under half health already. Trix and Spudio putting in some solid work in the dual lane to put the Hunter down.
I mean, this is already good damage. If you're going right back off of what Mifflin had just said, Geb doesn't have the best early game, but you do have something a little bit more standard. This E-set's going to throw a little bit of fork for him, right? Like, okay, what are you going to do? How are you going to approach it? They're squishier on one hand. They deal more damage on the other hand, and it doesn't seem like that's going to be going their way.
Both going in, gets a pin with one, and the knockup. Trix Tank tries to roll out. Dude Man doesn't get the stun off the EI Jutsu. Instead, Trix Tank does get to roll back to safety. Not for lack of at least losing quite a bit of health, but at least they get the blink out of the jungler.
And that pause for a little bit? Yeah, okay, good. They're going to slow down a little bit over there. That's what I was hoping for. I mean, this is a good lane early on if you're Quig and Dude Man Bro to be able to get aggressive and control a lot of this, especially since you know that you're going up against the Geb, but you do have to still factor certain things in, right? Level 2, depending on whether that shield's available, all of a sudden your stuns are going to maybe not quite be as useful, right? When he hits 3, 4, things like that are going to be really big on your mind. And you also have to be worried about it. I mean, the fact that Oath was already showcasing a little bit of their presence in this duo lane means that they know that this is definitely a huge pressure point for them.
A lot of pressure here in the dual lane, and a lot of that off the back of this E-set and the Hachiman that you and Mifflin have been really highlighting a lot towards here. SLEEKNESS found a lot of their wins through their dual lane during the playoffs, and Angry almost getting soloed here by Neu on this Zeus. The Spirit Ball onto Trix Tank, and EI Jutsu after for a double stun, some decent body blocks, but the rollout should make sure that Trix Tank can get out absolutely no problem. Gormizer, it absolutely blows my mind that in the year 2021, we have seen E-set not only get picked in 3 positions, but also has had success in all 3 of those roles. That's wild to me.
And I'm trying to figure out which one hurts my brain the most, right? Like, okay, mid? No, that's fine.
No,
Makes
jungle
sense.
hurts the
You know
most.
what? Yeah, that tracks. Support? You know what? I've seen weirder things, like, so I can let it pass. I've played weirder things, admittedly. Maybe not competitive, but I've definitely played weirder things. Yeah, no, it is definitely the E-set jungle that breaks things the most, but we don't have Sino, so we don't have to worry about that as of right now.
Don't jinx it.
Still, something that I think is worth noting is the fact that it's going to be a weird transition. I mean, you do have 2 warriors on the side of SLEEKNESS. You do still have Erlong. You do still have this Nike. But lacking a Guardian presence is going to be a big deal if this game goes on long, especially with an Aphrodite. You add Geb shields in. There's an Artio that I completely forgot about until this point because she kind of meant nothing to me until the late game. It's going to be a lot of this early game. They need this pressure if you're SLEEKNESS, and they need it to go well.
Now, I'm looking at the opposite side of the board here. Well, I'd say that. I'm looking over towards SLEEKNESS. You've got a Zeus in the mid lane, Book already, so you're safe to assume this is probably Book of Thoth, Book of the Dead, Breastplate of Valor, maybe a Soul Reaver thrown in there. But when you're facing off against something like Aphrodite, Artio, Camazotz, I gotta imagine you gotta slot Divine Ruin in there pretty early in the build.
It's so awkward to try and figure out where you're going to put it, though, because like you said, you need that Book of the Dead.
Angry, caught out, ultimate expended, 3 charges, not enough for the kill, but Oates got the last bit of damage needed. First blood goes to the North American boys, SLEEKNESS on the board.
And they get the red buff afterward. I mean, that might be picture perfect for what you need. Again, early presence and no way. Okay, no, they're just leaving it there. I was wondering, it's like I saw this red buff go down. It's gray. No, they're not going to be able to scoop that one up. But they do take away the experience. That's a huge win for them, especially with this amount of pressure. Admittedly, a lot of this is shutting down more or less the duo lane more than it is mid. That kill onto Angry is going to be nice, but it's still Aphrodite. 2 levels down. I'm not expecting much from that right now. It is adapting. Actually, it's kind of just adapting right now that I'm looking at this team comp. Like, I don't think there's much they can do in terms of fighting, especially with the deficit that they're starting to find themselves at.
Well, will be an early Gold Fury Scorpion, or Gorp. I guess I can go back to shorthanding the Scorpions there. So the Gorp goes down. That one goes to SLEEKNESS, so a little bit of extra golden pocket for the rest of the team. And speaking of that golden pocket, 1,000 up from that 1 Scorpion plus a first blood. Second Scorpion started up here by the team of ELYSIUM. Chronic making his rotation over to maybe try and stop that one out. An early lead so far by SLEEKNESS, and I kind of joked about it when we were on the desk previously, Gormizer. They kind of hinted at it a little bit here on the desk and going into this set. But ELYSIUM is one of the few European teams out here who play like a North American team. It's very often these guys are looking for these early kinds of skirmishes.
Very hands-on, very active. Granted, this composition doesn't really lend to that. Like, again, adapting right now, he could do whatever he wants. He just has to recognize that he's not going to have a lot of follow-up, right? If he does get aggressive, you've got Afro healing. And, you know, back-off damage is pretty nice, but again, Mifflin had said it perfectly on the desk. Scaling is the name of the game right now, and so you need a little bit more time. And ultimately, this is a draft that does really well with that. It still feels like it's something that wants to kind of drag its feet a little bit, get to that 20-minute mark, and then it's really going to start to excel. And I like the fact that what we're seeing out of Sleekness is more of a clap back, right? They recognize, you know what? Especially with an E-set in the support role, we've got to get active now. We've got to do what we can. And they're tripping them up as much as they can, and they're finding these little objectives, you know, a small Scorpion over there in the Gold Fury Pit. That's a little win. They get 2 purple buff invades, I believe, and then a red buff invade. All of it is just slowly stacking on top of each other. You get the first blood bounty, gold really starts to get into your pockets, and you start to feel a lot better about the way the game's going.
So far, though, Sleekness down Sleekness up a little bit here over ELYSIUM again. We're going to try to get back to this game just as quick as we can. A brief pause in the action. Apologies for that. But jumping in here, though, you know, kind of talking towards the late game, I think, is right here for ELYSIUM. You know, European teams typically like to go towards more of the 25 to 35 is where they really start to pop off here. And kind of looking at this comp as a whole, this really does just feel like a late game, and maybe just hoping that adapting can get a couple of early kills to keep him going?
I think it's, a little bit of a battle, right? Where realistically right now, your main goal is just, hey, let's not lose in 10 minutes. Like, as long as you do
Let's all hope that.
you're pretty much fine, right? And I think that's really the control for ELYSIUM here is like, does adapting need to get kills? Not really. Would it help? Absolutely. Does the team need to not feed their brains out? Yeah, but they could get away with a couple of deaths, right? It's not the end of the world if it's 5-0, 12 minutes in, when you start to find your traction, when you hit that mid-game and you start to feel the stride. You feel the shields, you feel the cataclysms, you feel a teensy bit of that back-off damage. The problem is not, in my eyes, really the gold right now. It's actually more the experience, because when I looked at mid lane, Zeus had a 2-level lead. I don't want Zeus to have any lead. I don't want him to do anything. And I think it's slowing him down that's going to be the most important. And also maybe the hardest, because even though it's still Zeus, he's easy to gank, he doesn't have Book of the Dead yet, this is the prime opportunity to go kill him. He's not got a lot of opposition. I mean, again, like you said, it's kind of can adapting, along with maybe a good stun, especially a lot of protection, a lot of survivability and sustain. He can dive towers, he can do whatever he wants, and should be able to get away with murder, but it's whether or not he can actually get the kill for it to be a murder. He might just be running into a tower for nothing, and ultimately I think that's going to be where the problem lies, is whether or not they can actually confirm these things when they need to.
And we did see that first blood go to the back of Oath there. He was the one who did get the final credit towards that kill. We started seeing what some of that early Zeus damage is capable of. I mean, if you forgot, go ahead back and look at either of Dragon's game 1s during the Phase 3 playoff on just how much damage this god can do. Funnily enough, that's also the only 2 games that we ever got to see Zeus during the playoffs was both game 1s of both Dragon sets, and then it respectively got banned every single time after that. So Zeus 100% win rate coming back into the SPL. Now let's see how he handles it here down in the SCC. He's got a lot of things to kind of lead him in there. We saw a lot of that duo pressure earlier from Dudeman Bro and from Quig, allowing Quig to make that very early rotation to mid.
That's such a huge deal as well, because like I said, now that you've got a lead for Quig, you got a lead in the duo lane, you've been stripping away their buffs, that it now has translated to a lead in mid lane, and it slowly starts to envelop the rest of the map. But it makes things more interesting, because you mentioned Zeus's win rate. I want to mention somebody else's loss rate, which is going to be
we're doing it again.
I got to bury him into the ground, man. He keeps getting locked in, and he keeps losing. So what is it? I know Kamazot's is 13 or 14 games now, counting, well, now it's gotten even more than that. He lost a lot during the Phase 3 playoffs. Ho Yi was 1-16 or something ridiculous like that. He's not been doing too well, and I think that's something to be worried about in this game. Spudio, I mean, this is not an early start that you want. And admittedly, that's not why you drafted this. Look, you never draft a Geb or a Ganesh and think, yeah, we're gonna win this lane, baby. You are absolutely prepared for the slowest game of your life. And I think this is a moment where you're just taking it patient. Again, don't die. Try not to fall too far behind. We've already seen one game today where you were down 8K and had 1.4 levels, and the carry still was able to have a huge impact. So I think they're taking it just the way they need to.
I think wild enough here is the fact that even though Oath is the one who got the credit for the first blood, it's the mid laner Ney who has a massive gold lead over his opposition, 800 gold. that he's up over Angry here. I mean, 4,500 to 3,700. I mean, I'm going to quick math and say that's probably closer to like 700, 800 gold, give or take on Waves. But that's a massive lead just 6.5 minutes in the game.
And you can see it's already kind of manifesting itself just with the way that they're playing. First off, experience-wise, level 9 to 7, he's going to be able to get their hands on a lot more. But you also have to watch these items. Book of the Souls, Persoff also got a little buff. Granted, it's a tier 2, so it's not maybe the biggest thing in the world. But so that's feeling a little bit better for Zeus. You had mentioned the Divine Ruin earlier. That's getting picked up early. And that's kind of where I was curious, is where it was going to go. Because a lot of people have been rushing Thoth into Book of the Dead, into Breastplate. Then you get, like you had said, Soul Reaver or Divine Ruin, and then you got to get Percent Pin somewhere. So I like this earlier on to help deal with some of the healing, help shut it down. Plus, that's a pretty big damage spike early on for this Zeus, even though it delays the Book of the Dead.
I mean, it got, what, buffed to like 110 magical power now on that item. Tarum wants to go for a nice little dive under the tier 1 and solo. But Chronic will be just healthy enough to deter Tarum from going too much further. Just going to send him back more than anything else. And on that back, Chronic, well, he already has his Blackthorn Hammer. He's going towards one of the bucklers here. Get a little bit of early magic defense online. But here's that benefit that Iset has. You can take just about any objective that you want, even if it's a small one, like the Draugr, but Trixtank goes in with a double cataclysm.
Wow.
The sun
Wow.
down, and Quick is absolutely gone. Maybe even Dude-Man Pro next with a leap in by Spudio. No bounce available on the Ricochet. And Dude-Man Pro gets out, but they at least get one kill in that duo.
That was such a good cataclysm from Trix, and that goes to showcase what Geb can bring to the table. I think a little different cooldowns there for Spudio, and you're talking about a 2-kill swing in favor of ELYSIUM. They have to be careful.
Both goes in, Lightning Storm drops down, and Trixtank
Yeah,
has
oh my God.
nowhere to go. Welcome to the damage. That is Zeus and Erlong Shen. As Sleekness put a second one on the board for themselves, and now one in the hands of the mid laner.
That was just Zeus. I wanted to like hype it up more than that, but man, that's the good old Zeus damage, baby. That's all he does.
What happened, Zeus?
And that is exactly why he is drafted here. And again, he's more killable right now than pretty much any other point in the game, assuming this build goes the way that we're expecting. And you've got to be able to jump on it now, because otherwise there's just more of that in your future. Granted, I like the fact that ELYSIUM are fighting back, but you brought up a really good point. Cataclysms, great setup on the side of ELYSIUM, and I think with Trixtank's ult, he's going to be able to combat around some of these objectives. But when you look at the rest of the secure, I mean, Suns, maybe you can time it right, and maybe you're lucky, and a tick happens to hit, and it's the perfect kill frame, but for the most part, you don't have that huge burst, I'm going to steal this objective from you, whereas you've got a big Zeus ult that helps burn things down on the other side. You've got Circle of Protection, 2 mages that are going to burn and secure the objectives pretty much faster than anything that you have. So ELYSIUM really have to win those fights around the objectives to make sure they don't slip through their fingers.
Sun's rain down on Dude-Man Bro's head. He's got a dash to get himself out instead. Now it's a fight over this small Scorpion. Banner comes through, and that buys enough distance for Dude-Man Bro to secure that one. God's help any person, not even an objective, any other player who steps within range of the double mage ult. It didn't even cross my mind the fact that you Venn diagram the Lightning Storm and the Circle of Protection. Yeah, objectives are going to die, but I can only imagine the poor lad who's going to get caught in the middle of that.
Yeah, there's not a scenario that I want to be in Zeus damage individually, but Circle of Protection on top of it, hey, guess what's happening?
Hey, well, there's the Venn diagram. It's a Cataclysm in by Trixtank. The Gold Fury does go the way of Sleekness, and a quick and hasty retreat out of the Chaos team will make sure that they not only secure the objective, but their own lives. But a lot of relics expended, beads, out of both of the carries.
Yeah, and this is actually where I think we can highlight what is going to be great for ELYSIUM. The bad side is that's pretty much every objective for the rest of your life, at least for this game, right? For the next 20 to 30 minutes, however long it happens to go, that's pretty much what you're going to be facing. If those ults are up, that's how it's going to go. Sleekness are going to be able to control it no problem and burn it way faster. They got through that Gold Fury in half the time this Pyromancer took. So that's a huge win for them.
That's not fair. That's not
But
fair.
you are going to be able to burn relics. You're going to have a much better team fight because they're using all of their ults for the objective. And I think that opens up a conversation. ELYSIUM could still potentially win an objective fight by being able to pick them apart before they're able to get the secure. Or they might just lose the objective but win the fight anyway. And so there's a lot that's going to slow them down. but nothing about that stops them, right? We've seen teams, you steal the Fire Giant, you get all 5 buffs, you lose all 5 members. It takes a longer time for the other team to win, but they can still do it. And I think that's really where ELYSIUM's going to be feeling themselves, at least as long as SLEEKNESS are committing both of those ults, the Zeus and the ESET ult, to every objective they face.
Angry hasn't been back to base in a while. I'd like to see the golden hand to see how much he's been pocketing for this time being, because he's a full item and a half behind Nehu just at this moment. Yeah, 2,500 golden hands. So he should be going back and picking up a near full item at this point. It will be a Lotus Crown for a little bit of extra defense, especially when those heals come through. Dudeman Bro spots out adapting, uses the ultimate to go in aggressively, and the banner will force the bat out of hell from the EU jungler. And ELYSIUM, once again, on the back foot of the fight as they're being pressured inside their own jungle.
This is just good presence, right? You've got Quig, and you recognize this early on. The Sovereignty has been picked up. The Heart Ward has been picked up early on. And being able to stay aggressive, recognizing that you have your capabilities as a mage to be able to find not only stuns, silences, decent damage on top of all of that. Again, you're still squishier than the Guardians that are on the other side. But when it comes to taking away objectives, you want to do it faster. And guess what ESET's going to be able to enable?
Tarim is just bullying Chronic on this right side, but such is the nature of an RDO. You have technically 6 abilities at your disposal. Only 4 of them do damage, but one of them is able to cancel out that channel via way of the stun. Spudio with a nice little trick shot there up against Dudeman with the ricochet, but not pulling the buff out entirely, so that one does get secured by Dudeman Bro. He's able to grab that one away from being stolen by Spudio, and instead, SLEEKNESS with their Hunter, he'll sit back behind the tower and no reason for him to really move up. Oh, look at this stare down.
Yeah, I actually really like things like that. Well, he goes for, that was the I'm going to call it this because it's the one most recent memory, but the Zapman ricochet that we had in all those highlights off the tower. You get a stun there, you drop the suns. Maybe it's not an entire kill, but you're still going to force potentially beads or something more from Dudeman Bro. So at least controlling a little bit. I like to see where Spudio's mind is at, because ELYSIUM, for what was and should have been a much faster and harder start for SLEEKNESS, have really done a good job of just controlling the pace, slowing things down. They still lost that Fury. They're still a little bit behind and nowhere near the lead, but they're hitting the mid-game stride that they needed to, and that's going to really sustain them into the late game where their team fight is going to be excellent.
Quig will rotate over. Level 11 on the ESET. A Blink Cataclysm from Trixtank will only get the beads out of Nehu. Spirit Ball does find 2, and the Lightning Storm is called down, adapting low, and a bat out of hell. Make sure that he gets back out there. What looked like it could have been such a good start for ELYSIUM. Nehu and Quig able to turn around the double mage to put some real hurt on ELYSIUM.
Well, I don't know whether or not this is a benefit. It's going to be a benefit because Quig's alone.
Quig uses the ultimate, and that buys him a little bit of time, but is it enough? The meditation keeps him alive for only a little while longer while Oath goes in the back line and gets the Suns out of the Hunter. Rotation in for Chronic, and Nehu still sitting in that mid-tier 1 tower. But it's a 4 versus 1 technically here, as Chronic is the only one to defend this tier 1.
The only thing I was confused about was Tarim used their teleport, but you look over there, they've been dominating that lane. You highlighted that earlier. Now they just get to be on a tear in the mid.
Ultimate in from Oath. The Turtle's going to knock up Tarim, but the T1 is gone. No more safe haven for the mid lane. Zeus, level 15. But while all this action happened in the mid lane, Dudeman decided to make better work of his time and push a T1 of his own. Drops the one on the left side.
I love the name Dudeman Bro, but man, is it so difficult to shorten any conceivable way. Yeah, Dude's over there. Nah, it doesn't feel like it's
man's over now.
Hey, he's getting
Pro's over there. 429. We'll just call him 429. Kind of like Awesome Jake 408, 429.
Man, you know, he is the 408. Yeah, you know what? We could make that work.
The 429. Well, the 429.
That just doesn't roll as well, though.
It really doesn't. But you know what is rolling well is this Primal Fury. That one goes easily over to SLEEKNESS. They didn't even need any of the ultimates from the mages to drop that one down. That is just pure damage output from the Chaos team.
That is, yeah. I mean, again, I expect pretty much every neutral objective. If SLEEKNESS gets there first, and that one, I mean, you're not even committing an ult to it. If they just get there first, they've got enough burn to be able to find it. If they get there first and they commit ultimates to it, then ELYSIUM have to win a very massive fight and be very, very careful about where they step in order to make sure they sustain it. We've already seen what Nehu's damage is doing. Now you've got the Book of the Dead. You've fully stacked your Thoth. You're feeling really solid in your build as of right now. So you are outputting a lot of damage in the blink of an eye. You've still got a 2-level lead, and while you're falling a little bit behind in the jungle, it was just slightly a little experience lead in favor of adapting here. Oath has perfect setup for this Zeus, as well as for Quig, to be able to just stun lock people, lock them down, and get the damage out there. I think if Sleekness get a good initialization on a fight, they're going to be solid.
Speaking of a good initiation, how about right on the Neu? Cataclysm drop through, gets the Aegis from the mid laner, but Angry gets turned on, has to use his own Aegis, and stuck inside the circle of protection is Trix Tank. Quig gets the credit to the kill, but adapting will finally put the mid laner in the dirt with the vampiric bats. Using the bat out of hell now to get away. Spirit Ball catches him, forces the beads out, and the Suns ring down in the back.
And this is just good damage. Adapting might get out of here.
Adapting low. Chronic still diving through. The slow, the push, and the damage are good. Chronic picks up one, and the Spirit Ball on Tarum forces the beads out of yet another member. Nearly every relic now off of Elysium.
I mean, this is exactly what you would expect if you look at this kind of composition. Unfortunately, slow still for Elysium, and that's a great kill for adapting. They're able to get to Nehu, who has the lead, who has been problematic, who admittedly at this point should be the most survivable. Now it's Tarum in trouble.
Tarum in the middle of 4 gets a stun against 3 of them, and that is enough space created for the Bear to get themselves out. Tarum walks out. Meanwhile, that Pyromancer does go down. The lead that Sleekness is building up now, 3,500 gold up. The experience, though, tells a completely different story, Gore. Dead even on the charts. The only person on Sleekness who was ahead, and still technically is ahead, is Neu.
Yeah, everybody else has been, I don't even want to use the term struggling. They've just been on level so far with Elysium. I think there was, again, solo lane that was really kind of the big differential. Tarum was absolutely controlling that lane. And since leaving that lane, that's allowed Chronic to catch up. Same thing there for the jungle. Adapting's been doing well and is very hands-on, but Oath has been able to get just as much, and while it's still a slight experience lead in favor of adapting, it's not the end of the world. Duo lane, Spuddy's been chilling. I don't think he's had many worries over there. And with the 2 assists, that's definitely been helpful. But this mid lane, and that's exactly where adapting goes, not only has the lead, is able to find the kill, which is difficult. He's got beads, he's got Aegis, he's got Book of the Dead, and he's Zeus. He's going to kill you or survive. And so finding that kill is such a big deal. But the turnaround from Sleekness and the damage output they have, and the control they have, it just seems difficult. If Elysium aren't all on the same page, they're not going to be able to really take the fights they need to.
A trading of places between the Hunters and an exchange of ultimates. Spuddio and Dude Man dance around the Draugr pit to try and get the hit on each other, but instead they'll swap around with their own mobilities. They'll throw a couple of ultimates. And it's Elysium who are rotating around and going aggressive in the Sleekness jungle now. Gormizer, we're hitting 19 minutes. The pace is, for the most part, kind of slowed down here. And as we start kind of pushing towards this late game, now that Elysium has at least been able to maintain parity as far as the experience is concerned, what are their chances looking around some of these bigger objectives?
Well, right now, Nehu and Quig have their ult, so not great, is how I'll start it. I'll preface it. It feels kind of, the best way I can describe this is it's like a tug of war. Sleekness right now have got the massive advantage because they've already got the lead, and so Elysium have lost their footing and are having a little bit more trouble finding purchase. They've still got a little bit going their way, and they're not out of it, but you're definitely starting to feel the ramifications of a bad early game as of right now. Your team still transitions great into this late game. Spuddio, we haven't really got to see a huge part of the same thing for Adapting, but they need to win fights.
Adapting leaps away to get out of the fight that Sleekness has started up here. Circle of Protection and the 9 turns Blessing out of Oath expended, but Angry and Trix use their ultimates in the start of that fight as well. So it'll be a quick rotation out from Elysium. Something wanted to get started up there. Spuddio was pushed all the way up to that tier 2 tower. The minds of Elysium recognizing, hey, you're probably in danger. A quick retreat from them.
Yeah, and admittedly, that's what I want to see right now, right? Get in. If things can go your way, take the fight. Absolutely turn it around. But I want to see Spuddio, I want to see Adapting involved in this. When you look at the rest of the team, it is set up from Trix, Tank, and Tarum, and Angry is keep him alive guy, and admittedly has to stay alive in order to do so. That is a lot of Zeus damage and the blink of an eye. Soul Reaver finished off there. I think it is something that they're going to need to be worried about, and they have to be on the same page. This is a good grouping from Elysium, but I still don't know if this is the right call.
Gonna be damage onto Trix Tank. The Lightning Storm in the backline. Another Stone Shield to Angry, but in the back is Quig, and Neu in danger by Adapting. Bat out of hell to get to the backline, but he doesn't want to make the full commit. But Trix Tank decided to. It's a triple Cataclysm coming out from him. and a quick rotation out as Chronic is low.
And now the damage is just pouring through. I mean, Nehu's still alive. Like, they're half health, but he's still got the damage capabilities, and they're moving forward.
Chronic is going in, adapting is low. They need one more hit on the jungler, but who's going to be the one to find it? It'll be Oath with the pin, and 3 of them are running for their life from Quig, but so much damage coming out from Spudio, the rest of Sleekness cannot continue the dive towards this tier 2.
Now let's talk about your ideal world. If you're ELYSIUM, you're getting Afro ult, you're getting heals, you're getting Geb shields, and you're diving the backline and finding kills. Let's talk about the reality, and that is Angry was half health when they initiated that. Angry had to use both relics almost immediately because of the Zeus ult well placed from Nehu, and then you have both carries kind of feeling a little lackluster. They don't get the support from the Aphrodite that they should otherwise be getting because Angry wasn't ready for that fight. You're already going in at what feels like a detriment, and then unfortunately you're chasing these kills deep into the jungle in a nice close quartered area, perfect for the mages.
Fire Giant started by Sleekness. They've got Quig's ultimate. They don't have Neyu's just yet. Circle protection drops down. The Fire Giant goes to Sleekness, and it's everybody from ELYSIUM now on the run. But a triple shockwave holds them out for just a little while longer on the side of ELYSIUM. And Sleekness do not want to continue diving in further into enemy territory. They get an objective cleanly with only the need of a couple of ultimates.
I mean, this is where things really start to favor them, right? They've got all of the energy and all of the push that they need. Relics are down for a hefty majority of ELYSIUM. You've got an Aegis that you have to worry about, and maybe Blink Cataclysm from Trickstank that's going to cause a little bit of trouble, but realistically, when I look at all the beads that are available on the other side, plus the safety that we've seen from Sleekness so far, I don't think they're too worried about that. The problem is going to be the defensive nature. ELYSIUM, even though they don't have a team that's been able to really find a lot of these fights the way they want to and haven't find the kills they need to, especially in the last, 10 minutes realistically, what they do have is a really good defensive composition because they are really survivable throughout a lot of these engagements. Even in your worst case scenario, under a Phoenix, this team should be able to survive a few sieges, and that's going to cause some trouble for Sleekness. I guess the better news is that they're not worried about Phoenixes right now because there's still a bunch of tier 2 towers standing in their way. But ultimately, I think that's something that they have to look at on the horizon. They need to figure out how and who they're going to target first, because otherwise I think ELYSIUM is going to be able to get away with a lot as long as they have a tower or a Phoenix around.
Corey, you know what just registered in my brain whenever they went back to base? Zeus has an Eye of the Jungle, now Seer of the Jungle, as his starter item.
Yeah.
We've seen so many different things pop up from some of these mid laners. We saw, what was it, like a Warrior's Axe before, whenever it was piloted by the Dragons. We've seen so many different items here. But Seer of the Jungle is probably not the one I would have immediately expected.
And honestly, I think it's a little bit of a compound, right? But realistically, just got buffed, if I remember correctly. But you get, hey, let's talk about something that I don't get to talk about with Zeus, but 30% attack speed is actually sick, and I forgot it was on this item. That helps apply damage so much. But of course, the power, it's the 105 magical power that he's getting from this upgrade. He is swinging for the fences right now. And, I mean, like you said earlier, just help anybody who happens to stand in Nehu's way. Those damage numbers are going to be too much.
Yeah, can we get a look on the shield real quick, though, Doug, just to see how much extra attack speed he gets from there? If I'm not mistaken, it is 40% extra attack speed, plus now 30% from Seer of the Jungle just as a flat rate. 70% increased attack speed. Now, you think, oh, it's a mage that's not Sol, Kronos, or Olorun or Freya. Whoop-de-doo. This is a Zeus we're talking about, Gord. That man, you want to talk about silly animations. It's always fun watching the Warriors go with, with giant axes swinging at 2.5 attack speed. Talk about a Zeus flinging lightning bolts like crazy.
Yeah, I'm actually really happy the camera wasn't on us because I decided to try and enable myself and enact what it looks like. He spins for his third auto, and that is where things will be ridiculous. But, I mean, think about it. You're getting 3 charges now, almost guaranteed every single fight, whenever you are able to throw out not just your chain lightning, not just your shield, but also just in your autos and the attack speed that you're going to have. And with all the damage, I mean, you have to think about it. That's one of the big detriments. Paul had mentioned it during the Phase 3 playoffs. We've talked about it a little bit so far this weekend. When you go Book of Thoth into Book of the Dead, you've got a ton of mana to work with. Not as much damage to really back what you have, though. And that was the biggest detriment for Tiamat in that first set, what we saw from Captain Odie Fan Club. I'm getting 105 power off of my starter item, plus, like 110, something like that, off of the Divine Ruin. Now you get to go into another item. You've got your Soul Reaver. Damage numbers are absolutely in favor of Nehu right now.
Yeah, damage numbers like the stonks, they're up right now. I mean, you've got damage galore. He doesn't even have the breastplate. I think that's an important thing to note, is there is no breastplate in this build, so he didn't hinder a single moment of potential damage here, because he does go with the triple book Divine, and then we can probably maybe assume a Rada Tahuti, though there is still some room with Charon's Coin or Chronos Pendant if he wants that CDR. But it has slowed down a little bit in the pacing. Even with this Fire Giant that Sleekness got, all they did was strip a couple of towers off the map.
And, I mean, that was the good thing. When they got that Fire Giant, there were 4 towers still standing. Good luck. I mean, in the ideal world, you're able to win a fight, take a tier 2, knock a Phoenix down. But again, it goes back to what I was saying. ELYSIUM has such a defensible team that Phoenixes are a little daunting to try and take on, especially if there were still 3 towers standing. I like what they do because it gets a lot more gold in their pocket and sets them up for success. Here, you've got all your ults available. They're standing in this mist for what could end up being a really, really eventful fight, but realistically, they're going to be able to burn this Fire Giant before ELYSIUM have too much response.
Yeah, it seems that ELYSIUM knew, but ELYSIUM still goes in. Triple
That's a good
Cataclysm out
Cataclysm.
of Tricksang. Neu, the book has been expended, and both ultimates from the mages have been dropped. The sun's rained down on top of Chronic's head. Neu is the one in danger. Adapting tries to get to the back line, but it's Dude Man Bro who puts him out, and Tarim and the rest of ELYSIUM are on the run.
And now they're chasing him down. Spudio's in a good spot, but they're not able to get anything. It's a 5v4.
Neu still wants to go in. Angry's got nothing left to his name. Dude Man Bro puts him down for the double kill. It's Sleekness don't care about the Fire Giant just yet. Now with everybody from ELYSIUM backing away, they can turn their sights towards the objective.
A couple of downsides, though. Every ult on Sleekness was just dropped. Granted, you could say the same thing for ELYSIUM, but that means that their burn potential slows down a little bit. Obviously not by enough, because they still burned the Fire Giant really fast. But it was a really, really precarious spot to be in if you're Nehu. They drop the Zeus ult, they drop Circle of Protection all in one area, and Nehu's running back, just trying their best to get that Circle of Protection heal. Doesn't get it. If Adapting's able to live just a little bit longer, I think this Zeus falls down, but you got to be more worried about the damage output from Sleekness right now.
Right to the Phoenix. Sleekness will go to try and push
That's
this
down.
one out. I say try, but there is no try, only do. Right side Phoenix is gone just as quickly as Sleekness are able to walk in and grab it. They'll steal a couple of other things along the way. Talk about a speed buff, some back camps in the blue, which was already stripped away earlier on. ELYSIUM now staring down the barrel of the shotgun that is Sleekness. Wormizer, what kind of defenses do these guys have? Or at this point, are you kind of maybe just packing and ready for game 2?
I don't know. It's such a weird spot to be in because your beads are all at the exact same timer, a little over a minute right now that Sleekness don't have to worry about that, whereas there's still a lot of survivability. I mean, you're missing Aegis if you're Nehu, but you still have both relics for Dude Man Bro. You've got the beads up for both Chronic and Nehu, so a lot of survivability just in the relic choices. Rada Tahuti now picked up here for Nehu, so you want to talk about even more damage numbers coming out? Hey, there it is. Plus a Potion of Power. This is a really good back. You get a Deathbringer. We haven't talked a lot about Dude Man Bro since then, but that's going to do a lot because there's no Spectrals on the other side. And then you have to think, well, you've got healing, you've got Afro ult. Trickstank is really good with these Cataclysms. Camazotz can save themselves. Tarim has a good dash, and Spudio has a good leap to get away. But all of that is defense, right? That's all, hey, how can we survive a little bit longer? You have to collapse. The good thing about Phoenix is it forces Sleekness into one tight little corridor to take the fight. The bad news is their ults are really good in tight little corridors like that, and guess what? It's going to force ELYSIUM to play in the same way. So they need to find something a little more eventful that will break apart Sleekness and maybe try to separate them enough for Adapting to get a kill.
Before we get into the action, Doug, can we get a look on Neu one last time? I'm very curious on how much magical power this Fire Giant enhanced red 1,064 magic power on the mid laner right now. Bless your soul if you even come within a walking distance of this man. Tarim, yeah, bursted right through the stone shield. That doesn't exist anymore. ELYSIUM are playing with fire against Zeus right now.
Yeah, the good news is, at least for Trickstank and Tarim, it's not the most pin that he could have on his build, but it's still some pin that's going to be eating through. And it's, you know what? I'm going to face it, Nehu doesn't care about the tanks right now. If any of that damage slips to Angry or Adapting, it's over for him.
Angry is just getting hit by the damage from the Hunter alone. Dude Man Bro, 429, the 429. He's pumping up some shots against the mid laner. But it's a very slow pace here. Sleekness waiting for a minion wave to come through. Ultimate's up on everybody in the map. And Oath will be the one to split push in mid lane as he waits, or as his team waits for the next minion wave to come through. But they got to be wary as fire minions are pushing up that right side.
no matter what, that's going to pull someone away, right? You have Oath going in mid. This is perfect, especially because he's just going straight for the Phoenix.
Oath already got half health on the Phoenix, adapting a little late on the rotation, a little late to save the Phoenix, while on the left side, it's the ultimates drop through. Lightning Storm is more than enough to take down Angry. Chronic will dive the backline to Spudio, who has to use the Aegis, and the barrier formation will be enough to put him down. Now you get the double. Quig picks up one. It's a deicide in game number 1, and Sleekness put down ELYSIUM to start the set.
You know, we were talking about it and the two distinct styles that both regions like to play. And even though ELYSIUM is definitely one that falls right in the middle, can play both that EU kind of slow pace, that draft wanted that EU slow pace. What we got out of Sleekness, that was about as North America as it could get. It is, we are going to fight and you don't get a choice. And they did it from minute 0. A lot of good control. They take advantage of where they're able to push up against ELYSIUM, lock them under towers, get a lot of extra farm that they wouldn't have otherwise gotten. And then things just seem to spiral out of control. Even when I thought it was starting to look good for ELYSIUM, the damage numbers just favored one side way too much for it to really fall the way they needed it to.
An explosive game 1 here out of Sleekness to start the set off. We're going to take it to a quick break, then we'll come back right after for game number 2.
No, I'm stuck like I'm touchdown. I can do my dance like a touchdown. Yo.
That's right, the Inside Apparel Company, our apparel sponsor here in the SPL. And what a fantastic time of year to get yourself some new SPL apparel, whether you're looking at the teams in general or the SPL in general, which is what these two items are. Shop.smiteproleague.com has you covered, and of course, Inside Apparel Company has us covered in providing all of that awesome merchandise to you. So whether you're looking for SPL gear right around the corner of the Smite World Championships, or you want to represent one of the fine teams that will be playing at the SWC, head on over to shop.smiteproleague.com and grab yourself a jersey, a hoodie, a onesie, something nice to cuddle up and watch the SWC in what is under a month now. We're getting real close, and a couple of these teams fighting to join the two teams that already have a spot there in the SWC are ELYSIUM and SLEEKNESS. Mifflin joins me after game one. And we wondered how the metas in the gameplay of both of these two teams would clash and which would win the day. Still a long set, plenty of Smite to go. But SLEEKNESS, that aggressive in-your-face style, and some interesting picks between the Zeus and the E-set is enough to take game one.
Yeah, SLEEKNESS did a very good job of leveraging an early game lead, especially throughout that duo lane. Despite having a couple of stumbles, were able to net themselves Gold Fury after Gold Fury, transition themselves into these mid 3v3 engagements. Get your gold online early means you also get your Book of the Dead online early, which means that your Zeus is online early. And that's exactly what happens this time around. ELYSIUM did have a fair bit of fight back, though. I think it was about 12 minutes in. We saw the double blink ultimate from Geb. Trixtank setting up for a ton of kills over there, but despite all that, it took a little bit too long. The name of the game for ELYSIUM was scaling, and by the time they had gotten to the point where I feel like they were at their strongest, where they were ready to take some fights, the game had already kind of slipped out of their control. SLEEKNESS had already taken way too much on the map, and when you're allowing a team that has Zeus to take that much on the map, Zeus can just run a game.
And this is Zeus without Lightning Storm, by the way. I remember earlier in this clip, Nehu had dropped it on the back of that fight. He's able to fight back in despite one of the most important ultimates in the game. And how about this combo, right? We've seen Zeus plus like Dharmic Pillars, and you're either walking out of the Dharmic Pillars or you're standing in the Lightning Storm. This is a little bit more telegraphed in that Circle of Protection's a circle and Lightning Storm's also a circle, but you drop those two on top of one another. And there was just such a hefty amount of melt damage, front-loaded, back-loaded on the fight whenever you detonate all that damage that ELYSIUM had to fight into. Dude Man Bro had a pivotal 2 kills there towards the end of the game, just took some time, but Hachiman continues his streak. And another example of a Ho Yi not having a win so far here in the qualifier tournament. That's something we'll have to continue on with. Spudio did good damage, but not quite enough. I think the big difference here, Miff, you're not expecting an Aphrodite to put out absurd damage numbers, but a 22,000 damage gap in the mid lane, probably enough to make a big difference here in this one.
Yeah, generally you can offset a good deal of that damage by the healing, right? Like one metric you can try and use to evaluate whether or not your healer on your team is matching value, even though you can expect them to deal less damage, is just add the healing.
Sure.
10,000 healing. Still not quite matching up exactly to the damage output that we saw from this Zeus. You gotta control
Still
Nehu.
12,000.
Yeah, it's still pretty massive. So I want to see a little bit more aggressive styling from ELYSIUM in Game 2. Put themselves on some picks that can take the fight in the lane and don't allow SLEEKNESS to just get away with a free laning phase.
I wonder how the strategy for ELYSIUM starts to change around Quig specifically. If SLEEKNESS are going to continue on in this set, allowing Quig to pick last overall in the draft, whether it's 9th or 10th, depending on if they're first or second pick. I wonder if ELYSIUM has any way of trying to mitigate that. I mean, of course, just straight up ban characters, right? I mean, you can ban the E-set, you can ban
Do you want to do
the
that?
Circuit. I don't know if you want to do that. Maybe it's just we expect him to play these types of picks and we try to draft around that. But that does start to become an issue. If you go down 0-2 in this set, if you're ELYSIUM, and Quig has a big role in that and maybe some more interesting picks, that's difficult if the SLEEKNESS team is hellbent on giving Quig one of the last picks. So maybe it's just a strategy difference or trying to pick a composition that maybe isn't quite as punished by a Lightning Storm and a Circle of Protection.
Yeah, I think that E-set support has certainly got value, right? Like, you still have to evaluate Circle Protection as its ability to confirm these objectives. But I think the best way to deal with E-set out of support is not necessarily to directly address it, but to address the pieces that facilitate it. Are you really able to move in towards these Gold Furies consistently if you don't just straight up have pressure in the long lane?
Sure.
Well, you might be able to, but it'll be a little bit harder. Are you going to be able to burn them down as expeditiously if you don't have a fed Zeus in mid? Probably not. You might be able to, but it'd be a lot harder. So I think that ELYSIUM doesn't necessarily have to completely direct all their attention towards Quig in the support role. Instead, kind of just target everything around it.
Here's the big question, Miff. Is this just ELYSIUM maybe a little groggy-eyed in Game 1, as we have seen them plenty of times in their sets, or is this SLEEKNESS showing up to play in a way that maybe ELYSIUM didn't expect in Game 1? Game 2 will tell all. Do ELYSIUM bounce back, or does SLEEKNESS take a 2-0 lead, in which case we need a full reverse sweep and not a reverse dusting, which I think is what we established. Because there's only 3 ways to do it,
Donnie
right?
Darko.
A full 3-0 return back, a 2-0 turn back is a dusting. No, it was a brushing was a 2-0, and then a dusting
was an airbrush.
An airbrush was a 1-game turnaround in a Game 5. I guess the only way that ends up happening. And that's all besides the point. We've got a lot more Smite before we're having an argument over semantics. Daji, Ganesh, and Bacchus, all 3 were banned out in Game 1 by SLEEKNESS. All 3 will be banned out yet again here in Game number 2 by SLEEKNESS. Similar mindsets from ELYSIUM here as well. And the stage is set. SLEEKNESS has got that last pick. We've talked about Quig and that last pick being left open to himself. Izanami banned away in Game 1. Left open here in Game number 2, and ELYSIUM have it valued first.
And already ELYSIUM have got themselves some pressure in the long lane. They don't have to concern themselves nearly as much with that early, assuming they still go towards a Guardian pick that can match up with it, that aggression. If you still pick up a Geb here, ELYSIUM will have more pressure than we saw last time around, but certainly less than you could hope for. Whereas SLEEKNESS, they've already got pressure.
Yeah.
Zeus establishes dominant pressure throughout the middle of the map. You're clearing waves incredibly quickly with that shield toss changes. Now at rank 1, you get 20% additional movement speed and attack speed, and that attack speed is pretty easy to utilize if you're auto-attacking an entire wave. Erlang Shen as well, if it's inside the jungle, finds pressure for your team nearly on his own. So I want to see how ELYSIUM addresses this. Are we going to see them go back towards these slower picks like Aphrodite or Geb, or are they going to try and match up to a little bit of what SLEEKNESS are bringing?
Well, it's ELYSIUM. Now you have to address it because this is what you gave up in Game 1. You gave up a Zeus and an Erlang Shen, and that just rolled through with the pressure. You stick if you're ELYSIUM. You ban away the Kamazats, you ban away the Odin, you ban away the Kleena, and so you're taking away stuff that SLEEKNESS didn't prove works against you. And so now you got to prove that you know how to counter out what just worked against you in Game number 1. Different look, though. Remember, ELYSIUM, they had a Geb, they had an Ardio early on in their draft. Merlin was not locked in quite as early. And maybe this is smart from SLEEKNESS. We won't zoom in too much, Miff, on the Merlin just yet. Maybe ESET did pose enough of a threat that if left open going into the second wave of bans, ELYSIUM is saying, all right, we don't want to deal with this again, and maybe you're forced to pick the ESET earlier in the draft.
Yeah, SLEEKNESS is essentially saying, hey, this is the core of the team composition that we had last time around. It doesn't really matter if they try to address the things around it, because we've already got the Zeus. We've already got the Erlang Shen. That's enough objective burn in its own right that you can just trust this E set to drop circle protection and confirm you those early objectives. But I do want to bring up, Terram had a good performance on this RDO last time around, so I think it's fine to go back towards that pick. Izanami already makes your duo lane look much, much different than what we saw last time. You've got a much better matchup in the E set. Izanami should be able to establish lane pressure, as well as Dark Portal puts a lot of threat onto E set as a god herself. And this Merlin brings your team a similar level of objective burn. You're never going to match ESET insofar as objective confirmation. No god in the game does that. But as far as burn is concerned, Merlin, he's kind of the staple for that.
That's right. So you're burn on one side right now. Sleekness maybe with a little bit better confirm on the other side, though you're able to burn down those objectives there as well. So still looking for one pick. Our Sleekness. But with a Fenrir and a Cirquette both taken away, Adapting still waiting for what his pick might be. You're going to have to see what Adapting is looking to play this time around. It was Camazotz, remember, in Game 1 for Adapting. Obviously, it's not going to be Camazotz yet again here. What style of jungle pick, and we might get the answer here quickly, do you want to see Adapting on here? What do you think fills the gap nicely?
I think that Disruption could go a long way. Something like a Hun Bots comes to mind, just the ability to drop large AoE CC abilities, stop some of these channels, make it a little bit harder for your kind of single target gods or gods that utilize auto attacks. Zeus and Hachiman, even Erlang Shen, would struggle against that level of displacement. So that does come to mind, and then I remember it's Adapting, and I'm like, oh, maybe he just goes to like Nemesis or something because he's just really good at it, or he brings out the Thor. I don't think he can go too wrong here.
I want a Thor.
Thor could go a long way. It's not exactly a great pick right now in my mind.
It sucks, but I want it.
It's okay into Zeus. I mean, it's one answer to Zeus, right? Dunk him when he doesn't have beads, kill him before he can drop the Lightning Storm. That's certainly something you can go towards. Kali, very similar. I mean, you do the exact same thing. You jump in, you stun, you press Destruction, and you DPS race a Zeus, except one of you has death immunity. Kali fits, but now your team is CC light. And the only reason I had brought up Hun Bots is because I was really not expecting this Geb to get locked in because of how much it struggled throughout the first game. But with the draft built around it now, I think that Geb still has a slow early game, but should be able to transition to that mid game a little bit more smoothly.
Does that then ease concerns around Izanami and Kali and the need for both of those picks to scale up a little bit into the game as the game goes on? Do you think that that transitionatory nature of a Geb keeps this game a little bit smoother for ELYSIUM? Because I still see an Erlang Shen, I still see a Zeus. On the other side, Achilles feels like it has some pressure. Do you think there's just too much early for Sleekness that'll allow them to run over ELYSIUM, or do you think there's the ability for ELYSIUM to keep their feet underneath themselves and get to that late game point?
The only weak early game pick that I would argue on the side of ELYSIUM is Geb. If this were maybe 5 patches back or when Boots still existed, you could say, okay, Kali, late game hypercarry, worthless in the early game. That's no longer the case. You get a Crusher early on, you can go immediately towards the Scream style build. I think like 2 items deep, Kali's already hitting like some pretty significant power strides. So I wouldn't call her that weak early game god anymore.
Sure.
Certainly has phenomenal scaling come late still, but her early game has gotten a lot stronger just by not having to purchase boots anymore. But to speak to your point, does Sleekness have a draft that can dominate the early game and just win you out? Yes. Straight up, yes. I mean, like, Zeus, Erlang Shen, Eset, Achilles, like all these gods have bully potential. This is, cover the name, I could have told you this was a Sleekness draft. This is exactly what each one of these individual players wants to play. But ELYSIUM this time around has brought tools, I think, that can contend with what Sleekness have.
Yeah, we still want to see Adapting active early in this game. Kali has the ability to do so. Quick thoughts on this Achilles here, Myth, because Chronic on the Nike was so important. You talked about big circular ultimates setting up for other big circular ultimates. The Sentinel of Zeus was that for the Nike. Obviously not going to be that for Chronic this time. You have the Achilles. What style of role are you looking for this Achilles to play for Chronic?
Backline dive. You've got the ability to just walk in there. I mean, you don't have the same level of survivability as a Nike does, but Achilles can put a lot more damage out in the early game. Sure, it's not the most fun matchup into RDO because the majority of your damage comes from that combat dodge. Can't really use that when you're in a cripple field, but once you get into the 5-on-5 engagements, close gap on a Merlin, Merlin's in some trouble. Drop somebody low, doesn't matter that Geb can give them a massive stone shield. Execute goes straight through it. So I think that this Achilles can work out, but he's also got a pretty harsh matchup into the Kali as well. Right. So get some good, get some bad with it.
Sleekness sticking with something similar to game number 1. Can they make it 2-0 in game 2? Go down to JMac and Gore to find out.
Yeah, they're going to need a big bounce here in game 2 because Sleekness picks up, well, almost the exact same draft, minus the solo lane as a change here. Instead, it'll be Achilles minus the Nike. And Sleekness heading game number 1. It's J-Mac, Gormizer, and Doug here for game number 2 of the best of 5 set. And funny enough, I was talking with you about Achilles in the green room and how he has 7 different buffs that he has active at his kit. He only has 5 max at a time, but can you believe that guy has 7 different buffs that he can put on himself?
Yeah, it's kind of nuts to think about. It's like, because you had asked me, and I was like, look, what seems like a reasonable number? That was because you had asked specifically how many or what is the most self buffs that a god can have, or that Achilles can have, and I was like, what's a reasonable number that doesn't seem too outrageous? I think I said like 3 or 4, and you were like 7, and I cried a little on the inside because yeah, I mean he's solid, but it's interesting because even still, he's not getting picked up the most of anybody, and I'm really actually curious as to how he'll fill this slot that Nike filled. Because the Nike was a lot more team-centric. You know, you get a nice big, first off, shield for yourself, but slows as well.
Angry. He'll eat a ton of poke from that chain lightning. Fortunate for him, he was the only one there, so it didn't have to bounce between him and adapting. Nayu already showing off the early presence that Zeus brings. Drops that shield down. You might as well just say goodbye to that mid lane. A little bit of pressure here from Spudio and Trixtank. Going up towards that Harpy, but they'll think better of it, and instead, Spudio will just go ahead and clear out the wave, and Sleekness will get their Harpy.
It is notable that as of right now, it's the same starter there for Nehu, so he's gone for this eye very early on, which is something that, you know what, I'm just going to expect from him from this point forward. We talked about it a lot towards the end of last game, and I expect it's going to do well. The only thing that I'm going to be a little curious about is whether or not he opts for that Divine Ruin as early as he did. Because there's not as much like active healing, but Tarim still brings it, and adapting is going to have some healing that you're going to want to deal with as well.
That could be the ultimate question to maybe ask Nehu later down the road.
Yeah.
Though maybe something, maybe not as urgent since you're not going up against an Aphrodite. A little bit of a change up from Angry, and a god that's much more recognizable towards him, I think. Back in the latter half of Season 7, coming into Season 8, this is a god that Angry loved to go back on whenever he needed to get some kind of power carry for his team.
Yeah, and honestly, I think this is a really good combination because Merlin should be able to kind of hold their own early on, float into a lot of this mid-game, not too worried about the damage output that you're going to have from the Zeus as of right now. And realistically, should help adapting stay on course with where you need. I was going to say to thwart some of these red buff, purple buff invades that we saw out of Sleekness, but I might have spoken too soon on that one.
That's immediate red buff invade. Nayu and Oath will go ahead and steal that one away. It's a double blink stun by adapting, but he's got to jump away as he's got 3 charges, but that sets up for the blink for Oath. Meanwhile, dual lane action, but adapting is low, and Oath just needs a little bit more, but he won't commit towards going towards that kill. Instead, he'll head over to the dual lane where it's been all pressure for Sleekness.
Yeah, everything bouncing around a lot, but realistically, you just get 2 low members on the side of ELYSIUM. It's a TKO and a kill for Nehu. So, hey, you know what? I think they're happy with this one now. Is the way you can wrap it. Oath is over here in the duo lane, and Trixtank is alone, but I don't know if this is really a fight they need to take.
Two-man bro dashed in aggressively and gets punished instantly because of it, so ELYSIUM able to get something out of nothing. Purple buff was started up there by the jungle, but he sticks around too long, and Chronic will eat a lot of damage from the bear. This RDO once again in the hands of Tarim, but the kills now even the gold, only very slightly favoring ELYSIUM here, just bouncing back and forth between the two of them. For giving up that first blood, ELYSIUM able to keep themselves in now.
Yeah, I'm trying to trace through. I mean, if you get the stun on Trixtank there in the duo lane, I don't even know if you get the kill with that. If Oath and Dude Man Bro have the combination with the stun onto Trixtank at the health he was at, I don't know that he's too worried about it. And Spudio obviously was there for the damage, so I don't know if that was... Well, I know now that absolutely it's not a worthwhile dash, but even at the time, I don't know if there was anything worthwhile that you could have gotten out of it. I like the way that ELYSIUM are playing this. You have Geb, you know that your duo lane pressure is going to lack because of that. What do? You get somebody like the Izanami that's going to give you a lot more back so you can continue that fight. And you notice Quig as well, they have not been on the tower line this entire game. ELYSIUM have been able to fight back and control a lot of the pressure that was what helped Sleekness get such a massive lead in game 1.
And we'll be back to a state of parity between the two, and neither of them really want to get super aggressive. I say that, but there are 3 Sleekness members sitting around this mid lane. Scorpion set to spawn in about 30 seconds, and Oath will make sure to get the vision control on them with those Oracle Harpies with the help of Quig. Quig not hitting level 5 yet means their objective secure, not quite there, but not lacking in the burn as it's already a Book of Toss started up and started the stackings for Nayu.
And again, a small lead, 6-5 overall, a little bit of gold in their pockets that's a little further ahead. You can see that in the net worth. And realistically, you're starting to see where that pressure is coming from. Whether you want to talk about the I start, which so far seems to be very beneficial for Nehu, or the fact that the Zeus damage has just been solid and the control in mid has been great. The fact that ELYSIUM is a little more light on CC makes it a lot easier for Sleekness to do exactly what they just did. Walk up to an objective, walk up to anywhere they could potentially take a fight, and not really be too stressed about it. Unless Cataclysm comes out, that's really your big initiator. You've got a couple of small stuns, small silences, and small amounts of control, but all of them are a lot more difficult to hit, especially in the middle of a team fight, and to stay safe.
Tarum over here just trying to bully Chronic back, keep somewhat of a lead for his team in other portions of the map. It's really only that mid laner for Sleekness that's ahead on his team. Outside of that, it's even or even slightly ahead for ELYSIUM. Across the rest of the board, Adapting will tango with the Greater Scorpion. He might need a little bit of extra help there. He does take quite a bit of damage, but does manage to clear it out. But knowing that now there's 3 on the right, or maybe not even knowing that there's 3 on the right, Sleekness goes straight towards the Gold Fury. They'll drop the Lightning Storm and the Circle of Protection. And that Gold Fury, you might as well just call sayonara to it, as it's going to go down. Sleekness with the first major objective on the map, but Trix Tank may not be giving up.
Yeah, third verse, same as the first, right? I mean, it's walk up, drop 2 mage ults, kill objective.
Double Cataclysm out,
Oh
and
my
Trix
God!
Tank with the Shockwave will put Quig in the dirt and put ELYSIUM's second kill up on the board. And Adapting still sticking around all this time, even with everything happening on the right side of the maps. ELYSIUM able to at least come up and get something out of nothing.
You know, if it's been a while since you watched Smite, and even if you've been watching as much Smite as I have, it can still surprise you how much damage Cataclysm can do. It was given base damage not too long ago, and that really just hurts Sleekness in some of those fights. I mean, one good Cataclysm from Trix Tank is going to be a lot, but you can see it, yeah, you know, 110 doesn't seem like too much, but you still get that 15% of the target's current health, plus you have that stun for your team to follow up on. It gets massive towards the end, the 550 plus that 15%, and Quig right now just got the Gauntlet of Thebes, so does not have like any extra health to work with, no extra tankiness, was still working on mage scaling, and you feel that one every single way. They don't have many opportunities like that before Quig can get at least tanky enough, but realistically, that's going to be the downside that Sleekness have, is how squishy their team is.
You know, it's still processing in my mind. You know, it's got the base damage, which means that Cataclysm can kill somebody.
And we've
where
seen
it
it
used to
happen.
never be able to happen before, but Trix Tank's getting a lot more help than just the Cataclysm. You gotta hear, maybe he doesn't even need anything. It's gonna be a lot of damage out from the mid laners, or if I should say from the mages, one of them being the mid laner, but it's not gonna be enough to kill the tank just yet. Trix Tank will live. He'll even go back to base, start running up by his second item. Soaked up quite a bit of damage there though, that Stone Shield. Putting in a little bit of work for him early on.
Yeah, honestly, I think you're seeing why Trix Tank is going to be difficult to kill. And realistically, I think we're getting a good presence from it. Even though the Geb was very lackluster in game number 1, I think what we've gotten out of this game is more of a showcase of what they expected to happen, right? Yeah, you're not going to be able to win your lane. You make up for that with a pick like Izanami, and then you get what you need out of this Geb. You get them on level, and actually a little bit ahead of where Quig is, and you open up Cataclysm conversations, good Blink ult initiations on a lot of these team fights, but also the shielding comes into the conversation. Knockups, all of the control that Geb can bring around any of these groupings in the jungle. We didn't get to see a lot of those from Trix Tank that were really effective. Now he's got a lead, he's got control, and we get to see it in its full effect.
We've been seeing the book build come out of the Zeus. We've been seeing other kind of flex arounds for mid lane builds, whether you go for some more cooldown, some lifesteal, whatever it may be here. But it's been a while since we've seen the Charon's Coin. Will hold that though. It's a quick beads out of Nehu,
Goodbye.
and he's as good as dead. When there's 3 running at you, there's not much that a lone Zeus can do. But Angry going for an early Charon's Coin item we haven't seen in quite some time, Gore.
Yeah, and it's been a while, and honestly, I think the last time Merlin was truly quote-unquote meta was with the Charon start. I mean, it's still a good item to start with. It just feels like there's others that are in the conversation now.
Well, now Dude Man is the one surrounded by 3 members of ELYSIUM. He'll jump on the horse and run as far as he can. He'll get back to his team. But ELYSIUM have got what they wanted. They at least got the ultimate out of Dude Man. Didn't get a relic. Adapting. He's got to be careful. Can't be backing in enemy territory like that. He'll jump away, get back to safety.
And I like the mindset that ELYSIUM are at. First off, they're leading in kills. They got 3 total in game number 1, so already they've been able to match, and I think are feeling a lot better. But realistically, you can see them being proactive, making the choices about who they want to target, where they want to put their pressure, and more importantly, isolating people who are still vulnerable, right? Dude Man Bro's playing Hachiman. Hachiman is very safe, but if you can get the beads or get the ult, you're going to feel very confident in your capabilities of then going back to that lane and finding the kill. You have Book of Thoth, now Breastplate of Valor. Nehu didn't have that up until this point, but with that, still pretty easy to kill. I mean, a little more difficult now with the Breastplate, but without the Book of the Dead giving a nice big shield on the other end, you do still have a lot of capabilities to kill him off. Beads are down. This is a great opportunity for ELYSIUM to continue dictating the pace of the game.
Well, into the mid lane, Trix Tank will roll. Gauntlet of Thieves almost fully stacked by both of the supports, though that usually does happen around the 11 or so minute mark. They'll have those up. I think it's interesting here that Quig has gone. Benevolence, maybe not so the interesting part, but it's this horrific emblem. We really don't see this relic too often. And it's one that just kind of really piques my curiosity when you're looking at the team they're going up against. You think it kind of makes sense trying to counter out some of that attack speed out of adapting or Spudio.
And when you look at it, actually, that's exactly why you would want it, right? Is because adapting, is going to jump. You have a stun, you have a bleed, but realistically, attack speed is your problem there. Same thing for the Izanami. Slowing them down takes so much of the damage and kill potential away from ELYSIUM.
Another red buff invade by ELYSIUM. Spirit Ball catches adapting. The red buff is secured. And Quig will expend the ultimate to make sure that it goes down. Oath used his ult earlier on and got put down to half health of his own. But a lot of pressure towards this left side of the map. Spudio will even proxy farm between the two towers. Dude Man not going to give it up, and neither is Trix Tank. It's a triple cataclysm out of the support. Nehu drops the ultimate, but it's adapting who's the one in danger. CC to all hell and back. And you get sent to the fountain in the grayscale.
And that is exactly, I mean, you go back to what Mifflin was talking about on the desk. If it came down to just Zeus versus just Kali, then Kali's going to win because you have an ult that makes you death immune. But when it comes down to all the CC around the Zeus, guess what? Adapting never had a chance. I mean, I can guarantee spamming the ult key as much as possible, trying to get it off at any point. But the knockups are too good. The control from Sleekness is exactly what they need in order to secure a kill like that. It is very difficult to do against Akali when they have their ult up. And that's going to be some of the problems Adapting has to overcome and face throughout this game.
Dude Man will avoid Phantasm out of Spudio, but a lot of damage through. Trix Tank will make sure to hold this tower for his carry, but Spudio cannot get the last shots necessary. Dude Man Bro, 4-2-9. He'll be able to get away from danger. Angry will throw some pressure towards Nehu, and for the first time, we're actually seeing Nehu behind in levels. We're all of game number 1 and all the way up until this point. It was Nehu in complete control of the XP.
And that's just good pressure from most of ELYSIUM, making sure, first off, Angry's on a god that we really like to see Angry on, one that has been very beneficial for ELYSIUM in the past. But realistically, you're also slowing this Zeus down by forcing him to feel awkward, whether it's an engagement in the jungle, when you get a kill onto him, or just right now. I mean, Nehu can't really comfortably leave the tower line. Damage output compared to this point in last game is much lower because he's gone for a breastplate as opposed for a damage item like we saw. You don't have the Book of the Dead, you don't have any of the other big power swings yet, so it's going to take a little longer for Sleekness to hit the same, well, level.
Here comes Trix Tank rolling through the jungle, but everybody on Sleekness is already in the depths of the tier 1 towers. They're not going to fall for the old trick a second time. Trix Tank will get spotted. It's a hunter battle over by the red buff to try and secure it. Trix Tank will start up the roll one more time, but Quig will stop that one in its tracks and put a lot of damage back on the support. The Lightning Storm even dropped down, but it's only half the health of the support that gets taken away.
Yeah, that Lightning Storm didn't do a lot of damage. The Detonate, still actually even more surprising, felt like it didn't do much damage. And again, maybe makes sense when you look what Nehu's packing compared to the fact that you're assaulting a Geb of all people. I mean, good isolation. But I think Sleekness are still trying to figure out where they stand in comparison to the last game with their power spike. It's going to take a little bit longer. And noticeably, after that first Fury, we haven't really seen anybody faint over there. With that Lightning Storm down, it slows down, I think, Sleekness's potential to be able to pick that up. But with Circle of Protection, you still have the best secure. It's all just going to be timing-based for this point, especially when you look at the other side. I mean, we talk about burn. That's exactly what Merlin brings to the table when it comes to these objectives. But when you look at secure, you've got Dark Portal, Cataclysm, I guess, technically, but not really a whole lot that I'm, like, banking my objectives on if I'm ELYSIUM here. So they still need to be a little worried about that.
Trix Tank will roll in, but once again, need a bit of CC. It will be the Oracle Harpies towards Sleekness. We talked a lot about playing each other's play, you know, kind of forcing a team to play their play against their play style. You know, Sleekness wants ELYSIUM to play these early game skirmishes because this is a very scrappy NA team. But here in game number 2, ELYSIUM have really slowed down the pace and forced SLEEKNESS to play more towards that middle ground that you were highlighting between the two as far as the pacing is concerned. So far, it's benefited ELYSIUM. They're up about 2,000 gold, but Gold Fury started up in a double Cataclysm out of Trixtank. Oath will get a taunt back onto him, a double Spirit Ball, a double knockup is good. Trixtank is gone, and Tarum shortly after as Chronic puts him down with the Fatal Strike. He'll go in against Angry, get the Aegis out, but Chronic is fine, just W-king at both the carries.
I was going to say, at that point, you're just going for zone. You're looking for stuns. Adapting's on the other side of the planet right now, so you don't have anything to worry about in terms of someone looping into the back line, picking off any of these carries. That is a great fight for SLEEKNESS, and you called it exactly when it happens. The knockups are what are the most beautiful thing. I was a little worried about this Achilles. Nike brings so much to the table. How do you fill anywhere near that presence? Well, there you go. You get the Erlong, you get the Achilles, you put them together, and all of a sudden it just is easy to steamroll. Good knockups into good stuns into good executes, and it all just comes together and really slots a good team fight for SLEEKNESS there.
It is level 12 out of Quig. He hasn't had a chance to go back to base yet, but they're not going to for the moment. Instead, it will be over towards a Pyromancer. SLEEKNESS take yet another objective. And all that gold lead that ELYSIUM had not even 60 seconds ago has been diminished entirely to a dead even state of gold. ELYSIUM do still have about 2,000 experience up, but that gap is slowly starting to close here as SLEEKNESS pick up 2 objectives and a couple of kills in that last fight.
And realistically, that's exactly how they need to make things spiral back into control for SLEEKNESS, I guess out of control for ELYSIUM. Now you're looking at Fire Giant being the only thing available for 3 minutes and 50 seconds till the next Fury is up. That's really maybe going to put some pressure onto it. I mean, if you're looking at SLEEKNESS, they have a lot of capabilities to burn at 18 minutes. Not necessarily the control you would want to do so. And that's where things get a little more, again, just awkward overall. ELYSIUM's been doing such a good job of controlling the map as of right now, save for these objectives. They've been doing a good job of making sure that they aren't falling too far behind, but it still feels like SLEEKNESS is hitting the same power points.
Well, it's again onto the Zeus, but he's got a Book of the Dead this time around. The shield is popped. Angry and Trixtank take a hefty chunk of damage, or at least Angry gets chunked down. Nehu does lose his book passive. That's now down on cooldown for 80 more seconds, but so is that Cataclysm. It's been used up.
Yeah, but you also lose Aegis if you're Nehu. You drop your ult, and it didn't get a whole lot. And it feels like, admittedly, a lot for ELYSIUM that goes in their favor, just to slow down SLEEKNESS. This goes back to the conversation I was having with you in game number 1, which is, you know, very similar to like a team that is behind getting the Fire Giant really just kind of slows down the team that's winning. It feels more like that's what we're getting out of ELYSIUM right now. Like everything that just happened slows down SLEEKNESS. It doesn't necessarily win them anything in the future, but it does make it easier to find opportunities. You've got 40 seconds to work with the Zeus, and we haven't got to see as much of adapting as I want. But now you've got the Hasten Katana, you've got the Chin Size alongside that Crusher. Like, the damage should be there, the auto attack should be there. I think this is where we can really start to see adapting shine.
Yeah, the chainsaw
Like
is
that.
starting
Oh my
to
God.
rev up, and you can see just what it can do early on with only 3 items in. Imagine if he had Trixtank to be there for some extra peel. I'm sure adapting would have gone for a little bit more. But Nehu's book will come back up in 15 seconds, so it seems that window of opportunity has now closed itself. But ELYSIUM trying to at least get some control across the map. It's mostly just back to farming. Tarum has already taken a tier 1 tower on the right side. The left side T1 was taken by Spudio earlier on. But it's this battle around mid lane, Gore. Trixtank really wants something here. The silence stops the Cataclysm, and Quig all by himself, able to keep Nehu from having to use a relic.
Yeah, realistically, what happens there is that Quig saves the team. I think that is going to be a very clean fight in favor of ELYSIUM. But you stop, at least as of right now, what was a good Cataclysm. Still available, blinks up, and notably, adapting is close enough. As of right now, he's doing speed buff, so he's a little bit further away. But he's been hanging around where Trixtank is a lot more in the last few minutes. And it's just because what they can do with the back of that stun, the back of that setup, is going to equate to a lot of kills very quickly. Speed buff available ult there. I'm excited to see adapting soon.
Oath is going to go immediately onto Spudio, and well, that's about it. Oath decided he wanted to fight Spudio and decided to cancel his subscription of life. That's going to be a dead hunter for ELYSIUM, now down for 40 more seconds, while SLEEKNESS have full reign of the map, but there's not really anything up. Both the major objectives aside from Fire Giant are already down. Instead, they might be able to try and turn sights towards adapting who eats half of his health in damage in the combo of Quig and Nayu.
Loses his beads as well. Adapting's now much less safe. I mean, if you have those beads and your ult when you blink in or if you leap in, whatever your engage is going to be, you feel very safe, very secure. What have we seen kill Adapting more this game than the actual damage? It's all the CC, and with those beads gone, it's going to make it a lot easier for Nehu and Quig.
Angry, avoids the Spirit Ball, gets the Flicker to go away, but he is falling low. Oath taunts him back in. The Lightning Storm holds him in place, but a lot of it aegis away by the mid laner. 3 ultimates now down for the mid lane, but Nayu still had the detonate. Angry goes down, Adapting ripping through the backline, but he doesn't have enough support. He gets CC'd to stop everything, and Chronic puts him down with the fatal strike to end his life.
And that is just good play from SLEEKNESS. Great job, more than anything, protecting the carries. I mean, that is such a difficult job when you have a Kali with 3 items online, chasing them down, especially with the ult popped. But they're doing a great job making sure that Nehu, nor Quig, and nor Dude Man Bro feel any of that pressure coming their way, so they get to wash that away. You get good damage out of the side of SLEEKNESS to make sure they control it, and that there's no way that that heal is going to make a huge difference. Great re-engage from SLEEKNESS, and so far, good control to lock down ELYSIUM after what was a really good early game.
SLEEKNESS here now with their first real gold lead of the game, now only to the tune of about 2,400. Now sights set towards Terra and the level 18 Artio. But is this one that these two can realistically kill? I think the answer, at least with that tower up, is probably no. But after that fight, they take the tier 1 tower, they take the Primal Fury, and SLEEKNESS now move their way over towards the Pyromancer, and they'll go ahead and just grab that one too. Let's just get the trifecta across the map for the boys.
It's a good pickup for them. Just, again, any neutral objective is going to be a huge win, but you get 2 in the span of a couple of minutes. You had mentioned it earlier, but like, I mean, you haven't necessarily been controlling the map state. Now you have to figure out what to do here, but ELYSIUM are starting up FG.
ELYSIUM with a risky pull here, half health on the Fire Giant, but 3 from SLEEKNESS have shown up to stop it. And the Fire Giant will be leashed immediately. Trix Tank use the Shockwave against Chronic, who's eating quite a bit of damage here. Terram walks forward, but a Spirit Ball makes sure to zone him back. ELYSIUM don't really expend a whole lot there. Angry only with his stance change down, but that's going to be right back up.
That is a interesting start for ELYSIUM. Granted, they still almost get a kill out of it, which could have been a huge deal for them. But I don't know if I want to start any objective if Quig is within 10 feet.
Dude Man Bro loses the beads off the Cataclysm. Terram will make sure to chase them out. But with the beads and the horse now down, a lot of Dude Man's safety is off the map. And Adapting will be the one to walk forward and keep sights on Quig, while the rest of his team just pushing up this right side.
And I like that, right? You managed to force Dude Man to now get rid of a majority of their safety, right? Ult down, as well as the fact that you're going to be missing your beads. So much easier to kill the Hachiman in this scenario. Plus, you have a pretty good opening, good initialization. 2 great frontliners, but no Cataclysm. SLEEKNESS just have damage, and that's really what they've been fighting with through Game 1, now Game 2. They can burn this objective incredibly fast, though, and that's really where you start to lose a lot of this grip that ELYSIUM have.
I think SLEEKNESS has damage might be an understatement there, Gore. They got quite a bit of it, almost 15,000 already just by Nayu in this game alone. Rounding, I'm not even going to say close behind him, is Chronic, just shy of 10K. If you want to know where all that damage has been coming from against ELYSIUM, it has been from the mid laner Nehu. Has hit level 20, but now it's a Fire Giant started up by SLEEKNESS. ELYSIUM are in the area, Adapting, rotating along the back. It's a Cataclysm just onto Nehu, but a Circle of Protection is enough to keep him out. It's going to be a Cursed Donk, but Oath is going to ultimately be the one to get the credit for the kill. And the Lightning Storm drops off by SLEEKNESS, and Adapting in the backline goes in, finds Nehu, but he is losing a lot of his health right back.
Good
Nehu
Aegis.
low, but the stun is good, and Aegis will not do it much to help out Adapting. He goes down, and Execute out of Chronic picks up another, and Spudio is going to have to call it curtains as Dude Man Bro slams him with the banner.
I mean, there's only one way to describe it. Nehu does exactly what he needs to, and the team does a great job facilitating that. It's not just damage, but realistically, they're putting him in the pocket. You have a Zeus that is doing all of your damage, and you need to keep him alive. You need to keep keep Dude Man Bro alive. And what do? They silence, they stun, they separate, they shield, they do anything that they are capable of to keep their team moving and stifle adapting, because he's the hard carry. I mean, Spudio can do a lot of damage right now, but you have to look at Kali, especially 25 minutes in, as a hyper carry, the one who's supposed to come in, clean up all the backline, be the saving grace for your team. The way Sleekness are protecting their squishies and the way they're keeping them safe is just brilliant for them. And realistically, you still lose your relics. If you look at Nehu, he's the most vulnerable now that they've been pretty much ever in this game. But at the same time, you've got Fire Giant plus this team that's been doing such a great job healing for you. I don't think that they're going to be that worried about what's going on. Trix Tank now has Cataclysm, Blinks available. There is still plenty of capability to fight back. You've got towers to fall back under, you got Phoenixes, you got a good defense team. But once again, that's not the position you want to be in if you have something as strong as adapting and specifically this Kali. And so I think this is a good opportunity for Sleekness to take advantage, especially of the separation right now we're seeing out of ELYSIUM.
By the way, 2,500, that's the amount of damage that Nehu did in just that last fight alone around Fire Giant. Bumped him up to nearly 17,000 player damage here in game number 2. 11-3. If I'm not mistaken, what you called earlier was that was the amount of kills that ELYSIUM got last game was 3.
Yep.
And then that's, well, all they're at right now. It's 11 up for ELYSIUM. Fire Giant around their waist and a tier 2 tower in their sights. It is a soft defense put up here by ELYSIUM. They're not going to give this one up for free, and Sleekness are going to make the decision to not even attempt to go towards it. Instead, Primal Fury respawning will be their target.
And this is one of those awkward moments where if you're Sleekness, I actually really like it because you recognize that you've been doing really well in terms of peel, but you shouldn't bank everything on being able to peel adapting, right? You need to wait specifically for relics. Beads are about to be up for Nehu. You've got your Hachiman with both of their relics available as well, and beads are about to be up here for Oath. Now you can get aggressive. You force the ELYSIUM to fall back. You get a spare neutral objective to boot, so you get a little more pressure. Spend some of this gold. This might not even, and honestly, with the amount of towers up, very suspiciously similar to game number 1, by the way. 4 towers up when they get the FG. Ultimately, this is one where you're just trying to clear out whatever's left in the map, get a lot more gold in your pocket, then focus on the next fight.
I want to point out that Chronic just spent almost 3,100 gold in an instant going back to base. And what does he do with that gold? It's a Heartseeker for his final item, alongside making sure to have that Sundering Axe from earlier on. So his build is finished out. Potential of 3 stacks with that Nemean Lion to really kind of just ignore one of the carries for a few hits. Adapting's not going to want to hit Chronic. It's only Spudio who's probably going to have to deal with him.
Let's say hello to Nemean. I feel like I've seen it a lot more recently. Like, yeah, I think in Phase 3 playoffs somebody built it. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was an item that does not get built as much as it used to. It used to be almost a shoo-in for every single tank. And I really like it here, like you said. I mean, really good at helping deal with either adapting or Spudio and ignoring them. Factor in that horrific plus the shell that Quig is bringing to the table. And all of a sudden, you're really, like, Chronic is almost negative impacted by a lot of the carries on ELYSIUM.
Pretty sure you heal him if you hit him at this point, but talking about healing and doing damage, it's Trix taking the back with a 5-man Cataclysm. But that's about all that he's going to get because everybody on Sleekness turned their sights towards the support. And they kill him in a heartbeat. Dude, man, bro, wants Spudio. Terram has to dash away. And all the while, Chronic is chasing out, adapting inside of the jungle. And Chronic is winning that fight. Adapting has to leap over the wall. And the tier 2 in mid goes down.
I think Chronic probably could have gotten a kill there, but honestly, they don't need it. Look at what the team is doing. And look at where their control is. I mean, there's still 2 towers up. But this time, they're actually going to get a Phoenix. They forced everybody to fall back. It was a TKO on Adapting. Had to fall back to base and run way up on the lane in order to back there in the first place. So that opened up a lot of opportunity for them, and it really, really utilized that last, like, 30 seconds of the Fire Giant.
Well, game 1, their Fire Giant got them 4 towers, and maybe a neutral objective here. This time, the Fire Giant gets them 2 towers, a Primal Fury, a Pyromancer, and you threw me off there for a moment, and a mid lane Phoenix. So they add 1 extra little bit there to their name, Sleekness. Now, 14, you really threw me off with that one, I'm not going to lie.
It's a good movie.
It is a good movie. Going back, though, Nehu once again finishes out his build, a Soul Reaver and a Red Potion for this mid laner. Probably not quite that same 1K plus that he had last time around, but he's got to be darn near close to it as they get ready to set up around the Fire Giant once more.
Well, good news if you're a Sleekness fan. Spectral just picked up for Chronic. Deathbringer just picked up for Dude Man Bro. Yeah, they're coming back and hitting a lot harder. Good news if you're ELYSIUM. What was the number? It was like 22,000 damage difference between Angry and Nehu in game number 1.
Yeah, something like
it's
that.
definitely a lot closer this time around, and this grouping actually could be the big deal.
It's going to be a pincer
Watch
maneuver
Trix.
for a round. Trix tank finds Dude Man Bro by himself,
Oh,
and
Angry's
Angry's
gone.
getting shut down by Oath and Nehu. Nehu's the one with the last hit. Spudio is low, healing for as much as he can, but he can't heal for much more as Nehu picks up the double kill on the Zeus. Circle of protection dropped in, adapting, dives into the back line, pops his death immunity, but how long will that benefit him? The answer to that is not much longer. Dude Man Bro puts him in a coffin, and we're along with 2 other players on ELYSIUM.
You don't even need the Fire Giant at this point. You've got a Phoenix, Fire minions in mid lane. You just run at them. Dude Man Bro's low, Nehu as well. You don't have a lot of healing, because Circle of Protection isn't available. But you do still have damage, and you have 2 tanks that are going to be dealing with you. Someone might die on Sleekness if they can get this tight.
Nehu low, Dude Man Bro a little bit further behind, but the entirety of Sleekness now walking in towards the Titan. It's only the frontliners of ELYSIUM to defend, and how good is their defense going to be? Only time can tell. Well, maybe we don't even need to worry about time, because the mid laner has more than enough damage to put the Titan in its own coffin. Tarim gets to live, but not the Titan. Game number 2 goes to Sleekness, and now Team ELYSIUM on the back foot in this best of 5.
So if I learned anything from Schoolhouse Rock, it's that 3 is a magic number, but it's also cursed because for some reason ELYSIUM can't get past that in terms of kill counts. It's 2 games in a row that they've been locked at it. I mentioned that like 20 minutes, not 20 minutes ago, maybe like 15, but still a long time ago. Unfortunately for them, they weren't able to do anything. I'm looking back to Phase 3 playoffs. I saw, like you had mentioned, the Zeus being picked up for the Dragons. I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, all right, I know how I'm dealing with it. He's not in the next game. If I could choose it, Nehu has to play anything different, or else ELYSIUM are maybe going to suffer the same fate.
Yeah, it might be time to change up the strategy here. ELYSIUM as you go into game number 3. We'll take it to a break and come back to the desk right after.
Hey there, Smite fans, Aggro here. Look, every single year, the SPL just keeps getting better. Season 7 was incredible, and in Season 8, I'm sure our players are gonna take their game to the next level. But in order to do that, they're gonna need the best gear they can get their hands on. And that's why I'm so excited to announce the title sponsor for Season 8 of the SPL is Alienware. Yeah, that Alienware. Our players are getting the best of the best in computer gaming. These Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition PC setups are insane. Not only will these be the PCs that the players will compete on once we are in studio, but Alienware is also providing one for each player at their home setup to make sure their practice is as good as possible. Now let's get down to brass tacks. The specs on these Alienware Aurora Ryzen Edition desktops are amazing. An AMD Ryzen 9 16-core processor.
That's a lot of cores.
That's plenty of processing power.
Plenty of cores.
If you want to stream, this is the way to go.
I know a lot about my cores, so. I mean, Pilates, right?
64 gigabytes of DDR4 RAM.
What? Is that true?
That is true.
I mean, this thing has 64 gigs of DDR4 RAM.
Which you can do literally anything with.
Literally anything.
I've never had more than 16 gigs.
That's quadruple the amount I have at home.
And one of the hottest commodities in the PC world, an NVIDIA GeForce 3090 graphics card.
Insane how much better this is than what I have.
The best graphics you really need, Ultra, of course.
Content's gonna look good.
What's the point of all the power if you can't see it? Players will also be using the Alienware 25-inch 240 Hz monitors.
Man, when I load into scrims with this bad boy, I'm gonna feed so hard. And it's gonna be in perfect picture quality.
We are so excited to be partnering with Alienware for Season 8 of the Smite Pro League. And the best part is, this VIP treatment, it's not just for the pros. You too can get the best possible Smite experience. Just go to smitegame.com/Alienware and use code SMITEAW to get special discounts on some of Alienware's best products. Thanks again to Alienware. Make sure you're following them on Twitter and Instagram. That's at Alienware on both platforms. And you can join their community at alienwarearena.com.
It's the best time of year, and it's the best salesman of all time. Not of
Me?
chairs, of computers, though.
Oh, nice.
Unfortunately, hands sold separately. Only the computer is what you get. It's the best time of year for Smite, and the best time of year means that these players need to be playing on the best gear for Smite Ultra. Of course, smitegame.com/Alienware. Use code SMITEAW, and not only the pros, but you as well can be watching or playing Smite during the best time of year on the best gear of the year. Once again, thanks to Alienware for sponsoring us here in the SPL. A whole lot more fun Smite to be played on those Alienware PCs here live in studio, hopefully very, very soon. Mifflin joins me to talk about Game 2 between SLEEKNESS and ELYSIUM. And Miff, I think they can probably just run our desk segment back from game number 1. There was a little pushback, a little more pushback maybe from ELYSIUM in the early stages, but the same combination of Zeus plus ESET plus Erlang Shen just kind of took over.
It took a little bit longer this time. There was more fight back from ELYSIUM throughout the early game, but at the end of the day, it does end the exact same way. It just felt like the team fight pressure of this Zeus, the space control that they were afforded by their composition, everything that SLEEKNESS wanted, they got. They had phenomenal safety for their backline. As far as I'm concerned, Dude Man Bro 429 needs to be addressed on the Hachiman because he's been having great performances on it for months now. Nehu shouldn't be allowed to play the Zeus again because that's legitimately what's won them the last couple of games. It just feels like ELYSIUM tried to adjust their own style to match what SLEEKNESS is bringing instead of addressing legitimately what SLEEKNESS is doing and trying to stop them. ELYSIUM playing their own game, it'll get you so far, but it just seems like SLEEKNESS has got a firm grasp on the current meta.
You got to feel for Trix Tank at some point. I saw more 3 or 4-man cataclysms this game than I've seen in a little while. The Zeus myth continues to be at the forefront of the conversation and the composition for SLEEKNESS. Worked so well in game 1, and then just took a little bit of time. Remember, Nehu was down a little bit in lane here this game, but it was just a matter of time, it felt like, for that Zeus to start to catch back up and become relevant in this game. There was a pretty distinct just kind of tonal shift in the middle of the game where it felt like Nehu could just kind of do no wrong. The damage was too much. Because I remember early there was like a lightning storm and detonate that all connected onto Trix Tank on the Geb. Literally everything that Nehu had on the Zeus, and it did like half of Trix Tank's HP. And I was wondering, what's this Zeus going to do for the rest of the game?
Get some more items.
Yeah,
probably.
get some more items online, and it worked out just fine as the game went on. So then the big question becomes, Myth, if SLEEKNESS find themselves in the second pick slot still, do ELYSIUM pick or ban away both, I think, the E-set and the Zeus? Do you think they are now ban priority number 1 to get ELYSIUM back into this set?
I'm so hard stuck in my old mentality, man. I'm not willing to say that E-set is the reason
Zeus.
that they're winning. Yeah, if
Play ball
ELYSIUM
with me
takes
on
Zeus, yeah, that's where I was going to get to. I think that's probably enough of an adjustment in its own right. I think Zeus is that strong right now. Such a blessing that Aggro isn't in studio today. So he would be.
That's now twice that you've said that. You're just happy that Aggro's not here.
God, I hate that guy so much. Just kidding.
I saw the tweet, although I don't want to peel back the curtain too much.
No, please, go ahead.
We saw the tweet on Smite Pro on Twitter of the whiteboard that says Aggro is a fat egg on it.
What?
Somebody's behind that, surely.
Some sick freak, man. I can't. They said that on our whiteboard?
Somebody wrote it there.
That's unacceptable.
In the background of the This Month in Smite video, by the way, if you haven't watched that, go to
you
Smite
were on
Game
that
on YouTube. I did the Bloodbath segment.
Huh, and that was the segment that had that.
That had that in the background. Mysteries will be solved. I'm not telling you who did it. They might be at this desk. They might not be at this desk. You know what is at this desk, Myth? Picks and bans for Game 2. And so questions will be answered here. Maybe not about the perpetrator of the disgusting writing on our whiteboard. You said it twice. I said it first. You said it second. We'll see if ELYSIUM do decide to make that adjustment. And this may be smart from SLEEKNESS, where they're feeling like ELYSIUM are taking like the top priority pick first. But for SLEEKNESS, it feels like Zeus and Erlang Shen have been open with those second two, and second pick has just been fine for SLEEKNESS. And ELYSIUM, on the flip side, still feeling like they want to take first pick here going into game number 3. And so I think Zeus obviously remains at the forefront of that conversation. E-set, maybe not if you're Mifflin, but maybe if you're everyone else who's watching.
All of them?
Every single person.
Oh my God.
So we'll see how ELYSIUM decides to adjust here. I mean, it's just unfortunate. You're in that first pick slot, and you think you're getting a pick that will truly, change the game. We just haven't seen the overall hefty impact from ELYSIUM here just yet. And so first pick definitely going to become highly prioritized. And SLEEKNESS haven't been pressured to change anything from their draft, or their bans rather either. Remember, it's been a lot of Bacchus, taking away some of those aggressive forward-facing. Ganesh has been banned out. Now it's Trix Tank, and so maybe it's more obvious take away some of those playmaking supports.
Yeah, and as of right now, SLEEKNESS not really one that has to change anything up themselves, right?
Yep.
Like, keep running that exact same styling, and you're going to be just fine because it's worked the last 2 games, right? It's on ELYSIUM 100% to be the ones adjusting their play style, their picks as well. I think that one opportunity, and it might be sacrilege to say this considering how strong he is in competitive Smite.
And that's unlike you to say
I
anything
would never,
sacrilegious.
Never, not me,
Right.
but maybe just stop picking the Geb. I don't know. Like, sure, Trix Tank's found a ton of phenomenal ultimates, and he's set up for a couple of these early game kill combinations with the Cataclysm, but imagine you're in the late game and you have something like Mojin. You just put some walls around
Maybe
Zeus.
they pick the E-set because it's all been E-set.
Yeah, maybe they pick the E-set because it's all been E-set. There's a lot of opportunities they can go towards, and we know that Trix Tank has had such a long career. I would love to see him pick something that is a little bit more aggressive leaning.
Yeah.
There's a reason his Bacchus has been respect banned every single game. It's because Trix Tank can legitimately just win you games with his, to quote the fat egg, degenerative play. Put him on something that can be a degenerate.
Now we said fat egg and degenerate twice in the same sentence. Hindu Man also notably not in studio, but I've been told he's listening.
Thank God. Wait,
and,
what?
And so it's not me.
Oh no,
Hindu. It's Mifflin who's saying all of the. Yep, that guy right there.
On the camera?
We're remaking the lobby for Game 3. You're sticking with us though. Don't worry, as Miff and I will tide you over before we get into picks and bans for game number 3. And I wonder, Miff, because the winner of this set moves on to play the Jade Dragons, which. And this is more of a credit to the Jade Dragons than a removal of credit for either of these two very, very good teams. I wonder who starts to match up better. I mean, we're looking so far down the road at this point, right? I mean, this is a matchup that's still yet to come. We don't know which of these two teams will play into it. But I wonder if SLEEKNESS with this kind of alternate but aggressive in-your-face play style might fare okay against the Jade Dragons.
No, I think so. They would definitely have more experience playing as the style of gameplay that the Jade Dragons bring, right?
Sure.
Like it's a very distinctive North American style, so you've got the entirety of the year kind of building up your tolerance to that early game aggression. But that being said, and I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, it depends on which version of the Jade Dragons
I guess
you
that's
get,
true.
really, right? Like these guys have been all at high highs and low lows. Maybe we get a middle ground, maybe we get one of those highs, maybe we get the
I will
lows.
say the Jade Dragons are a team, after a break, tend to come out, I think, very well. Recentered, refocused.
Yep.
And so that said, I'm not necessarily excited if I'm ELYSIUM or SLEEKNESS at the idea of playing a refocused and recentered, remotivated Jade Dragons team.
All the reasons.
Anything can happen, right, over the course of this week. But the Jade Dragons definitely a threat, to be sure, to either of these two teams. You're talking about building up a tolerance. Can you tell me the movie where one of the characters slowly drank poison his
Dances with the
entire
Wolves.
life to build up a tolerance to it, and that played a pretty pivotal role early in the movie? He says inconceivable a lot.
Hunter x Hunter Killua Zoldyck.
Yep, you got it right there, Miff. Good job.
Yes.
Camazot's
Yes.
locked in here for ELYSIUM. This was the pick in game number 1, and adapting, didn't blow us out of the water on that pick. Granted, none of ELYSIUM have. It's been a rough set so far for ELYSIUM. Morgan is the pick. And so with some changes required here, Morgan ends up being the option for SLEEKNESS and the Kleena as well. So 0 for 2 on things we've seen from SLEEKNESS so far.
This is a wildly different style of composition from these two picks. You immediately got the Morrigan, who is not a large AoE, just mage that can utilize that Book of the Dead build to its fullest value. Now you're kind of playing a pseudo-assassin role where you're trying to maneuver around the back line, utilize that stealth to its fullest potential. And even the jungler being switched up from Erlang Shen to Kleena, assuming that this is going into the jungle. That's completely different as well. Erlang Shen's one of your tried and true initiators, can utilize that turtle form to get into the fight first, and the health shield that you gain from it to stay in the fight longer than anyone else. You've got a nice taunt just to set up for your team. Kleena doesn't have any of that. She's got damage. She's got a silence that takes like 2 seconds to channel. She's got a slow that's tied to your ultimate. It's mainly just damage from this god. So far, SLEEKNESS, this is a completely different look at them.
Agree. I mean, it's so forced, right? The core of this SLEEKNESS draft has been ESET, Erlang Shen, and Zeus, and ELYSIUM just don't want to deal with any of them all together at once or individually, so all 3 are off the table. Nike was something that Chronic played in Game 1, was unable to do so after a ban in Game 2, now back to it here in Game 3, so I do think that's a bit of a boost here for SLEEKNESS. On the flip side, though, you got Camazot's Mulan and Heimdall. Heimdall safe, but later in the game will really start to wind up. Mulan, though, in the category of feast or famine style solo laners, I think you could maybe throw Mulan in there. We've seen Mulan games where the player just absolutely dominates and the game is just around the Mulan, and also games where Mulan has just kind of fallen flat. Are you a fan of the Mulan pick here? In a do-or-die, must-win Game 3 for ELYSIUM, Mulan ends up being your solo lane pick.
I am of like mind with some of the SPL solo laners, specifically Final K has gone on record saying that he thinks Mulan is just crazy. I kind of tend to agree. You say feast or famine, and that's to be sure when you're playing a highly aggressive lane bully, but I would argue more often than not, it's feast. This god has great damage output, a phenomenal CC to find those 1v1s, great sustain in the lane, decent transition to the late game now that you no longer have to completely root yourself with that ultimate. You can cancel it out early after that knockup if you don't want to use that bow stance, and well, generally I don't. To give you a little bit of context on how strong I think Mulan is and the new ranked ban system, I have not played against Mulan a single time because I ban it every game.
On a scale of Donnybrook to Tilly, she's a Donnybrook.
Straight Donnie Darko.
Donald Brook, the boxer from the 80s. That's where Mulan is.
Yeah,
Horus,
Danny DeVito.
Yep, Danny DeVito. Horus is the lock-in for SLEEKNESS here. Not a pick we see all that often. There have been a decent amount of support bans, to say the least, by SLEEKNESS themselves. Ganesh, Bacchus, Gab, and Kepri all taken away. And so Horus Smith, upon release, and I think Season 7 we saw a good amount of Horus. A little bit here and there so far in Season 8. The aggressive in-your-face style of play can cater very well to building up a lead early in the game. Plenty of hunters still for SLEEKNESS to pair with it. What are your thoughts on Horus and his viability at the moment?
I think Horus is completely viable. I mean, it's a god that can fit into certain compositions, but Horus is the style of pick that you need to build a composition around. And whether or not SLEEKNESS have done that here is yet to be seen. I think Horus has got a decent matchup into Heimdall. You've got plenty of ways to CC him and try and stop him from utilizing that Bifrost. But Horus is generally single target in his CC application. You've got a essentially 0 CC jungle. You've got Nike, who's really only got the slow on the ultimate and the knockup, which is generally going to be single target as well.
Whoa.
The Morgan, equally single target in her CC application. There's a lot of decent self-peel on the side of Sleekness, but as far as the 5-on-5 engagement goes, before we talk about the Oleron, didn't look so good. Now Sanctified Field, I mean, you're dilating time. That feels pretty nice.
It does feel good. And there's a Morgan in there as well, and I think that's important to look at, Myth, because you talk about Tartarus Titan-esque styles of draft, something you mentioned in our pregame segment here about this Sleekness team. Morgan is a Tartarus Titans-esque pick, especially when you pair it with something like the Nike. We've seen those two combo together very well. I don't know if you ever double Oleron ulting. That's a lot of Sanctified Fields to be on the map at once. Do you think the team fight for Sleekness continues to look as good as it has in Game 1 and Game 2, despite those 3 pivotal pieces being taken away?
I think Sleekness's team fight got a lot worse. Their pick potential is pretty good. I'd argue much better this time around. Their ability to maneuver the map, much better as well. But if it's 5 members of Sleekness lined up against 5 members of ELYSIUM, this is going to be the best chance that ELYSIUM has to win out in a team fight. It's just the style of composition that Sleekness has brought is completely different. Expect them to play the game a lot differently than what we saw in the last 2. I'm not expecting early objective calls from this squad. Your confirmation isn't the greatest on the side of Sleekness. Your burn, relatively good, I'd say, between Kleena and Oleron. You're going to be shredding, but you don't have that E set to confirm every single objective. You're not getting that same level of pressure as well. Whereas ELYSIUM on the other side have got themselves a just standard strong smite composition. Good scaling from the Tiamat, a lane bully in Mulan. Camazotz has got great dive potential against picks like Oleron as well. Athena is going to be able to match some of that global presence that Horus is bringing. This might be the first time this set that I'm favoring ELYSIUM.
This is going to be an important game for adapting, I figure, here. You talk about Sanctified Field and the way teams counter that out. You know, with CC immune ultimates, the ability to just walk through it tends to be the answer. So Camazotz with Bat Out of Hell, especially for adapting and his ability to stick onto the back line, going to be pivotal here in game number 3. They've got to do it in 3 straight games, though.
That's tough.
Is what's difficult here. We're on the sweep side of the spectrum and not the light dusting side. You know, we got to go 3 straight. We don't have the brooms out just yet. Maybe after a Game 3 win for ELYSIUM, we'll break them out. Sleekness, 1 game to go. Let's find out.
Going to need a lot if they want to bring this set back. In a best of 5, ELYSIUM are already down 2 of the 3 necessary that Sleekness need to close it out. It's JMac and Gormizer here in game number 3. And we see a little bit of a, kind of a forced difference here out of Sleekness, as we did see the Zeus and the Iset band away. Talk about a kind of wildly different style that we're seeing coming from these guys.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like the fact that they're missing a hefty chunk of CC, but I do like the fact that what they bring to the table, I think specifically Oleron is able to provide a lot in the middle of a team fight that you might not be missing the CC so much with that Sanctified Fields. Quig, I know, Mifflin had mentioned it as single target CC, the stun that comes through. I actually love that, though, because it does shred protections as well, which makes it a lot easier for damage to come from someone like, let's say, Oath or Nehu, who might be masquerading as Oath for some of this game. I think there's a lot of damage on the table that is going to enable Sleekness to continue a similar route to what they've done so far. But this is the best draft, and I think most controlling draft that we've gotten to see out of ELYSIUM. I'd like to see if they can kind of hold up to that standard that I expect now.
God, we saw what Kleena was able to do to objectives by herself in previous games. Now with the potential that Nehu could transform into a Kleena of their own and have, upwards of like 4 charges at ultimate, all firing at the same time, all firing on the same cylinders. I'm a little terrified for any objective that stands in their way. Maybe not player, a little bit harder to lock them down inside that Tear the Veil, but Quig over on that Horus, I think I kind of want to bring him up because we haven't really seen Horus all that much at really any level of play.
Yeah, I mean, he's been not the most popular this year, but when you see him, he does a lot for the team. His ult is really nifty. I think his knockup is good, and there you get to see it in controlling Trickstank.
Trickstank eats a lot of damage, him and Spudio. And no meditation this time around for the Guardian. Trickstank will not have access to that extra healing, so he's got to depend just on his potions alone. He's got a few of them still to spare. Going up against Quig, who has gone med and has the healing, Seems like it's going to be a tough lane for Spudio and Trix to get any kills in.
Yeah, this is not going to be easy by any means. Admittedly, when Oleron, you know what do we always say? If his ult is down and his beads are down, then that's the opportunity that you have to kill him. Right now, one of those is true, but it's only because he's not level 5 yet. As long as Quig is here playing Protector and you don't see adapting, which right now he's on the other side of the map, I think this is going to roughly come out as a stalemate. Athena might be able to change things up just because one good taunt can change a lot, but you need a lot of pressure.
Potential 2v2 on this right side. In the wall is Oath. He'll dash in against Adapting. Throw the Flickering Spirits at him. Just a little bit of damage, and Adapting will return fire with some damage of his own. That Vampire Bats will heal him back up. In this 2v2, it's Oath and Chronic on the healthier end of it.
And I like the fact that they're getting aggressive, although they might need to be careful, especially on the other side of the map.
Quig gets a big heal and a double knock-up. Dude, man, bro helps
wow,
him out. The sword comes through, but it's not enough damage. Spudio's low. Quig is low. Everybody's low on this left side, but nobody who's going down. Instead, it's a late meditation coming out from Quig to make sure to get them back and healthy to go for a purple buff invade. I am absolutely floored no one died here. Speaking of death, though, it is Tarim who chases down Oath. Trixtank walks too far forward, and all the fighting finally leads up to 2 kills, 1 each for both teams.
We have to talk about this, though. For all of the build-up to that first blood, that was the most lackluster. Oath was just walking in the other side of the jungle with no health.
He almost died to pass.
There's nothing impressive about that. Admittedly, it's still good. You get your gold. You're probably feeling happy here if you're ELYSIUM. You do lose a kill on the other end, so ultimately it's not the best-case scenario, but you end up killing jungle for support. And that's always a trade I think everybody is worth taking. So they're going to be not happy about it, but at least going to be okay with it at this point. And Trixtank is now going to be in a good position. I mean, level 3 Athena, you've got your shield wall, you've got your taunt, you've got your dash. You're feeling pretty solid in your capabilities of setup. Admittedly, you still want a couple of levels. Your level 2 taunt is really solid, but then getting your ult as well. So once you hit 5, you've pretty much hit your stride, and you're going to be able to, you know, really find control throughout the rest of the game.
I'm actually very curious how much and if he did on his health that he lost by utilizing his passive inside that wall, because it looked like he walked out of it with about 15 HP. So I'm curious just how long Oath had stood inside that wall, assuming that's what put him at such critical health. But on the left side, it's a blink double taunt in. Adapting comes through to try and clean up the case, but as a Sanctified Field drop through, it's not enough to save 2-man pro. A swipe down and one more basic. This one out of Spudio will seal the deal and put a second kill up for ELYSIUM. But that gold lead still relatively even here, even despite the double kills coming out of ELYSIUM.
Now, I hesitate to talk about how good the early game is going right now for ELYSIUM, because last time I did that, it didn't translate into a good late game for them. But I'm going to do it anyway, and they'll have to live with the ramifications of that. This has been very solid, good ganks so far from Adapting, good positioning from them as well. Again, the only person having fallen is Trixtank. I like the way that they're playing aggressive, as well as the fact that Trixtank is finally on a god that it feels like he's impacting a lot more. Granted, he was getting 3-4-man cataclysms in a lot of those fights, but this taunt is really helping him.
Taunting against Nehu, and the veil has been torn up against Adapting. Oath is the one who cleans up the kill. Trixtank can't get back to his teammate quick enough, and instead it's a transformation into the Camazotz by Nehu to chase down Angry and beat him with his own teammate. It's 3 kills on the backside of the fight, and all of them are Sleekness.
I don't know if I've ever jinxed no, that's not true. I've absolutely jinxed myself, but that was fast for the turnaround.
That was one of the hardest caster curses I've ever seen, man.
Well, what a pickup. And Nehu, surprises me here. In that, we've been talking a lot about potentially being able to turn into Luclina. I forgot that Camazotz was a viable transformation target for him, and Camazotz is like the go-to for Morrigan players to transform into. A lot of survivability, but you see the damage, the chase down, good kills, good pickups, and a great way to turn that on his head. ELYSIUM just overstay their welcome with what was a good initial engage, and then unfortunately it lasts a little too long for him to get out of there. Sleekness, just good reading of the scenarios and making sure that they capitalize on exactly what they have. Good ults, and a really good lockdown on the 3 members of ELYSIUM to get the kills.
Man, there's been a lot of caster curses in the past. You know,
that one was quick.
Usually it does take a little bit of time. Usually it only affects one person. But you curse 3 people all in one instance.
I cursed the whole team.
You're like, yeah, they're doing really good in the early game. Trixtank's doing great, and then Trixtank gets a good taunt, and then everything just went downhill in almost the blink of an eye. ELYSIUM, who were up 2-1, now down 2-4 up against Sleekness. Well, was a strong start out of this team. Has it quickly been halted yet again, but the target is Trixtank, but he will not get in that ultimate yet again. The kind of the downside of this Athena really being put on for show here.
Yeah, it really is unfortunate because it has been some of the most fun play that you can have, and again, enabling the rest of ELYSIUM. But it hasn't been helping too much, and now, oh man, Adapting has to be careful.
You know, thought occurred to me, well, I'll get to that thought after this fight's done. Tarim goes in, uses his ultimate, and he's got Athena as his backup. Taunt goes through onto Chronic, pulls him right back into the shield wall, but it's a quick dash and a knock-up out of Chronic that makes sure to get him away. Adapting now rotating over to see if he can get any damage up against them. Maybe try and turn a kill. He'll go all the way around the backside. Trixtank will be there too, but Blink out of Chronic gets him away, and the wall makes sure to keep Oath alive for the time being. He'll back right inside, but he's surrounded by ELYSIUM. Remember, he'll throw out the Flickering Spirits on one just to keep Tarim guessing, but he's still got the rest of his team to make sure to finally put him down.
Yeah, Chronic had been a little faster. Maybe you still pick up Trixtank there, but ultimately I think that's a good kill for them to pick up, especially with how much time they committed.
Solo kill in the mid lane potentially here as Nayu grabs Angry and puts his second kill up on the board now for the mid laner. Going back to the question I initially wanted to ask is, I've never actually tested this one before. Does the time dilation of Oleron's ult make it longer to channel that Athena ultimate?
It should, honestly. I mean, you know, if it's having everything,
imagine.
so you have to think that it's going to make it even longer. But, I mean, you know, think about it this way. Even if I had to spend twice the amount of time, if I'm taking damage, this is a different story. But if it was just twice the amount of time, I like global ults. It's not going to feel that great, but I like global ults. And so I have to say, I think Trixtank isn't going to mind it too much. But that is a good way for Dudeman Bro to control that duo lane and specifically control where Trixtank can really have that full effect.
It's always in games like these where...
we were discussing the concept of Kleena and dropping things in her ult if you were Morrigan and then you de-transform. Like, there's a lot of things that I never even thought to try that out.
I mean, there's so many potential interactions in the game of Smite that not one single person can really test everything. At least not by their lonesome here. I mean, we'll get to see.
I don't know.
Some
Divios existed. He'd spent, how long was it? Like
there was also
5 hours?
There was also, like half the gods in the game by the time Divios was, Divios was playing, so he didn't have as much to work with. We're borderlining 120 gods here with the release of Atlas today. Hey, there's a good shout out back to Atlas. He dropped today here on this lovely 8.12 patch, which is what all of our players are playing on here for this tournament. Adapting, been having a bit of a struggle, I think, to say the least here for the ELYSIUM squad. And Spudio eating half of his damage, Quig rotating over. They might want to try and get the kill here, but there's that magic number 3 once again, Gormizer. I don't want to be the one to caster's curse them myself, but Game 1 and Game 2 have only ended with 3 kills, each one for ELYSIUM.
I sincerely hope it gets beyond 3, but only because I'd feel really bad if they did.
Maybe the ultimate curse.
If 3 was like they get 3 games and they get 3 kills each, they can't go past it. That would be very, very unfortunate for them. Luckily, there's still a lot of opening scenarios for them. SLEEKNESS have had a couple of explosive fights. We got that solo kill, but there's still been a lot more presence from ELYSIUM on the map, and they are only 10 minutes in. Adapting's on a really good god for engage. You get Angry on Tiamat, who is really great at scaling into the late game. I think ELYSIUM are in a great position to continue controlling this, especially considering the lack of CC SLEEKNESS out.
Adapting caught out. One veil has been opened up by the jungler, but it's only one for the time being. A taunt in. Nehu a little bit in danger here. Adapting has to use the bat out of hell to get away, but it's a transformation in. Nehu jumps in aggressively as the Nike of his zone. The Rend is enough damage to take down Angry, and Tarim caught in the middle of 4. Has absolutely nowhere to go, while Trixtank will spare his own life and go back to base and leave his solo laner hanging to dry. 8-3 now reads the kill for SLEEKNESS.
Again, I mean, you get Trixtank, you get Adapting out alive, and it feels like this really big triumphant moment for ELYSIUM, except it comes at a cost of 2 people anyway. And SLEEKNESS don't drop a single soul in the process. Now we get to talk about that burn we had seen earlier. Even without having to use your ult here, if you're Oath, you're absolutely fine taking this Pyromancer. I think this has been a problem for ELYSIUM, trying to deal with the pressure that SLEEKNESS are capable of outputting. And more than anything, I mean, it's not necessarily been map pressure. In fact, if anything, I think SLEEKNESS has lost the early game map pressure in the last 2 of them, at least in terms of tower count. But it's neutral objectives that go their way. It's these team fights, the damage, and more specifically, the team play I mean, Sleekness are absolutely synergizing at a different level right now than what we're seeing out of ELYSIUM, and it's keeping everyone alive. It feels like they're just so zoned in, and it's been such a huge boost to every style that they've brought into this set so far.
I'm just going to say it out. I'm probably not going to be super nice about it, but Angry is getting manhandled in mid lane. He was just down about 2.5 levels, close to that 3. Neu is 3-0-3 on this mid lane Morgan. Now, we'll make it a true 3 levels up that he's got now over Angry in this mid lane. He has not been able to have a fun time here in Game 3 on this Tiamat.
Yeah, I think that's what the caveat, right? Tiamat scales really great into the late game. Star does need to have levels behind her, like needs to be able to catch up. I didn't even notice the 3-level difference right now, and that just goes to show what Nehu is able to accomplish on this Morgan.
Trixtank caught inside the Veil, taking a lot of damage. Typhoon comes out from the mid laner to zone them away and make sure that Trixtank can get out. The Sanctified Field by Dude Man just to keep himself alive for as long as possible up against Adapting, who leaps back inside Sanctified Field. A quick Aegis comes out, and a nice little juke boot turnaround. Dude Man Pro keeps him away. But even Trixtank used the ultimate, thought maybe he was calling for Adapting to go back in there.
All of that really good for slowing things down. Trixtank is alone. And I think, yeah, recognizes that. Turnaround for a taunt, but now there's 4 people just fishing for it.
Oath goes in aggressive. We'll use the Banshee's Wail to get some big damage up against him. Trixtank was willing to go back in aggressive. 2-man taunt gets the beads and the Aegis out of Oath. Nehu at the front line of everything, but it's all 5 of Sleekness around this Gold Fury, but Terrorum around the back line trying to sneak his way in. Hits 2 with the ultimate,
that's
kill. Enough to pop Nehu. He goes down, the first one of the fight, but Angry is also in trouble. Quig gonna get some big damage, or Chronic will get some big damage up against him with those thorns, but not quite enough to drop the mid laner. It's just 1 for ELYSIUM, and they finally break their curse of 3s.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. The 3-kill curse gone for ELYSIUM. But more importantly, they kill off Nehu, which might be the most important target early on. I mean, last time they were having a lot of struggles getting rid of that Zeus, and it seems like you get them on someone that admittedly will not and should not be using the book build, and you can see is not using that book build. It's going to be a lot easier to kill off. I mean, yes, you have beads, you still have Aegis, you still have invisibility built into your kit. A lot in terms of survivability in comparison to Zeus. But still, something that is vulnerable and a lot more easy to take down. So good kills coming down from ELYSIUM, and that's the kind of fight they can take. That's the kind of power they can have. Admittedly, it was only a single pick, but that was a good pick to be able to pick up, and I think that they're going to find a lot more opportunities like that in the next few minutes. They just have to capitalize on them when they show themselves.
I agree. With the help of that last little kill there, being able to pick one up for himself, has closed up a lot of that experience gap. What was 3 levels, now only closer to about 1.5. that Nehu has up. Still a significant lead to have. 14 minutes in the game to have your mid laner be level 15. Dude Man has to sit back behind this tower line. Spudio and Adapting really are fishing for a kill against this Hunter. Dude Man, up until this game, hasn't really had a whole lot of pressure thrown towards him. And finally here in Game 3, ELYSIUM starting to show a little signs of respect towards him.
I like this, all right? I mean, just making sure that you aren't going to be biting off more than you can chew. Dude Man Bro has beats, has ult, just going to be able to protect themselves in the worst case scenario, but realistically should be able to turn around some of these fights as long as it's not a 2v1. Right now it's a 3v2. If Trixtank gets a good initiation, Adapting, especially right behind, would be able to follow up very easily.
Oath is here. So it makes it a 3v3. Trixtank wants nothing to do with that fight. Said he'll go back towards the mid lane to help out Angry and soak up some of that extra farm that he needs. Just ticking over to level 12 means he'll have access to a relic. Ultimate is up for both of them. Adapting tries to get some poke, but is immediately returned fire by Dude Man Bro. Had a lot of charges held up there. Adapting bites off a little bit more than he maybe wanted to chew there. Said he'll have to retreat after healing off the camp.
Honestly, this is a good spot, I think, for ELYSIUM right now. You're in an unfortunate scenario of down in gold, down in kills. But you are coasting, right? Experience is so far so good. If you get this kill on a Nehu, that's huge, actually.
Nehu down to half, transforms into the Nike for the extra health shield that comes from the Sentinel of Zeus. An ultimate in by Trixtank, but Nehu is still living. and still find a double veil tear out of Oath, and it's Sanctified Fields out of Dude Man Bro. Angry has nowhere left to run, and it's the Hunter who puts him down. Dude Man Bro finally puts himself on the board for Sleekness.
There's been a lot of isolation in the mid lane. Trying to kill Nehu is a good call for ELYSIUM, but unfortunately that just turns on its head. You get both relics out of Angry and still lock them down. You had to use a lot of ults on the side of Sleekness in order to do so, but the amount of CC that came through, as well as really waiting out the mitigations that you get from Defender of Olympus, from Athena going in and trying to save Angry, it's just those small little plays that really amount to, again, a small kill, but a lot of map pressure.
Quick dash out by Trixtank. Gold Fury down to half, leashed and picked back up. But it's Spudio on the backside of the fight who wants to make an impact through. Or maybe it's just Tarum. A double taunt comes out of Trixtank. Oath is low, and Oath should be gone here, but the med is keeping him alive until Spudio puts him down with the Gallarhorn. Dude Man Bro picks up one and forces the Bifrost out of the Hunter, leaving his support up to try, and Trixtank goes down, and it's a double kill for Dude Man Bro.
I mean, that is just a good rotation. Once again, good peel. Oath is honestly surprisingly dead there. And yeah, Oath was virtually dead throughout a lot of it. Tarum is the saving grace for ELYSIUM with that play, and ultimately opens up a lot more of a conversation for a defense, at least, from them. But the way they've been playing, it's almost surprising to see Oath go down the way they did, because Sleekness has been so good at peels. It was just slightly off in terms of where their cooldowns were for healing and things like that. So unfortunately for Oath, they go down. Fortunately for Oath, their team still cleans up the kills and neutral objectives, so it's not like they're too worried about it.
Well, Adapting will at least try and benefit his team a little bit. Right side Tier 1 and Tier 2 tower are now down, so ELYSIUM can try and stem some of the bleeding. Spudio gets a little bit of help from Trixtank, gets a quick blink taunt in on Dude Man Bro. Beads are used, but he doesn't have enough lifesteal to deal with the crit that's coming out of this Hunter. Spudio finally puts Dude Man Bro back in his place. It's a 3-0 up for the Hunter.
That was one moment, especially, it was so close to the ult coming back up. Might not have mattered, even if the ult is there to turn it around, but really is a conversation starter. Now you've burned both relics, ult just now comes back for Dude Man Bro. So maybe next time around that's going to be a fight that's more worthwhile for them. But a good kill if you're ELYSIUM, being able to pick up now the same amount of kills in this game as they had in Game 1 and 2 combined, which is a big deal for them. But you're also showing what Spudio is going to be able to bring to the table versus what Dude Man Bro has, especially when you think about the fact that Spectral Armors are only going to do so much and nobody has started one, so I think that we're going to get to see a lot more damage right now out of Spudio until we get to see Dude Man Bro really get their hand on the wheel with the next ring.
Pincer here in the mid lane, 3 go in, Oath with the dash. Angry has separated himself from Adapting. They won't come up with anything here for the side of Sleekness. Down but not out here is Trixtank. 0, 4, and 5 on this Athena. You would think with a slash line like that, that Trix would be even further behind than he already is, but he's actually the one ahead in XP up against Quig. Instead, it's Tarum who's got to use the ultimate to try and get away. Chronic does not want him to go so easily, neither does Quig. He'll go in with the ultimate, one veil torn through, and a fight inside the Fire Giant pit to make things a little bit easier. Chronic gets the final swipe with the help of the FG.
And that is a very clean kill to be able to pick up. You had to commit quite a lot in order to get it, and Dude Man Bro might be in trouble because of it.
He's got nowhere to go. He's trapped inside of his own tower and inside of his own field. It's Adapting who's credited for the last hit of the kill. And ELYSIUM, even losing some of these early skirmishes, even after the earlier curse that you put on them, they are able to turn this one back around. Another Tier 2 tower goes down, and it's only the structures in mid that are standing in the way of ELYSIUM and pushing into that base.
Meanwhile, other side, there's still 5 towers up for ELYSIUM. They're not hurting in the least in terms of base defense as of right now.
Big damage coming out of Chronic. A double taunt by Trixtank. Pulls a couple in, but now it's Nehu who leaps in with an ultimate of his own. And he gets some good damage, but it's not going to get enough. That Tier 1 is still standing there. And they don't want to make too much of a commit onto this dive. 20 minutes in, and ELYSIUM have tied this game back up.
Yeah, I mean, in all regards that matter, they are perfectly happy with the way the state of the game is right now. They're going to lose a Tier 1 tower.
You got this, Chronic.
Yeah, I don't think you're too upset about that one. Yeah, it's taking forever in order to get there. That's just a small step in favor of Sleekness, though. Again, a little bit of gold can go a long way, but they're virtually even in that regard. Experience kind of doesn't matter too much as of right now. So ELYSIUM are in a firm control, and it just comes down to where their hunters are. Now you're starting to get Dude Man Bro with both relics back that opens up a lot more of a conversation around team fights.
Talking about the one to dive here. It's been Nehu all game long for ELYSIUM, and they're not going to stop here, at least not quite yet. Adapting, lose a lot of his health. Dude Man Bro's rotation. Make sure to buy some time for the mid laner to get out. Nehu eating a ton of damage from that Typhoon minion that's been thrown out by Angry. Umu Dabrutu, that's its name, by the way. So if you didn't know out there, you can find that actually in the tooltip. First time I've actually got to use that on the cast is what the name of it is.
I'm going to be honest as well.
You'll never remember.
Win in one ear, right out the other one. It sounded real fun, though, and that's the thing that matters the most to me is when they sound fun. Ultimately, I'm looking at Tiamat as 1 and 4. This is where things get awkward. Angry was dying a lot earlier on. I hadn't been doing a whole lot of that lately. I mean, those 4 deaths, it's not the prettiest slash line, but you're surviving in a lot of these engagements. Nehu has nothing like that to say.
Oh, he has a quick transformation ultimate. He'll be able to get himself back out. At least for now, he's taking a little bit of damage from that through the realms. But he'll be A-okay with the help of his own Nike ultimate. Now O taunted in by Trixtank. He'll quickly dash away. And somehow, some way, Nehu's able to make it out of this fight alive. And didn't even have to burn any relics because, well, they were already down before that fight broke out.
Yeah, this is, again, a very interesting position to be in. If Sleekness lose Nehu, I think that's a lot of the pressure and capabilities that they can bring to a lot of the team fights. This is where you're starting to feel a CC. That taunt coming up as often as it is. I mean, look at that. Yeah, Quig stays alive. But realistically, that's a 10, 15-second cooldown. I mean, you're going to have that back up soon for Trixtank. And that is something that Sleekness just don't have to work with.
Oni Fury will go handedly to ELYSIUM because of it. Quig, who was forced to go back to base after a single taunt from Trixtank. And where earlier I was kind of talking about the negatives of Athena. You know, have to sit there in your ultimate for seemingly ever to try and get out. If you got a lot of damage coming your way, you probably die. There's the benefit of the Athena right there. That taunt, such a potent CC. Nehu gets caught out on the wrong side of the map and in the wrong jungle. And ELYSIUM are probably scratching their heads like I am, like, dude, what are you doing over here?
Don't know what the end goal was. None of his team was with him. I mean, maybe it was a deep ward, but cost you your life, so it was absolutely not worthwhile. Now your team has to fight for 40 seconds around an FG, a man down, and admittedly one of the most important on the team. This is a great set of progress for ELYSIUM.
And once again, Trixtank goes in with another taunt, puts Quig down to half health, and Adapting wants to try and finish the job all by his lonesome. But he's going to need some help from the rest of his team. He'll need a bit coming back out of the bat out of hell. And Trixtank, he'll reset himself, go back to Fountain, use that ult, come right back in. And who's his next target going to be? It's going to be Chronic, who gets stunned out by Angry. And again, just poke after poke coming from ELYSIUM.
So far, I like that Sleekness has been able to survive through this. With Trixtank, you can see, is fishing for a lot more. If Quig gets caught out, that could be the end of the fight.
Sanctified Field drops through quickly. The team tries to get out, but Chronic goes in the back line. Sentinel of Zeus to slow down 3 and force Spudio to run as far as he can. The Ren will disarm him, but he's not looking to turn around and fight back. Instead, it's Nehu who gets a transformation of his own into the Athena to try and pull Trixtank back, but they come up unfruitful in the fight. Tarim, however, is falling low, and Dude Man Bro finally puts him down. And after a long and extended fight with Nehu died before everything back, it's him who comes back in the fight to try and make an impact for the team.
And I wasn't actually sure about this, but they're going to go for it. They have fire minions pushing, or not even fire minions, that's just Oni minions on the left-hand side. I don't know, this is a risky fire giant call, but I like that Sleekness are taking the risk.
Chronic is pulling that tornado in. I'm going to say that was pretty risky of him, but it's a massive taunt by Trixtank, but it's Nehu who gets the kill on Adapting. Spudio low, and Spudio may as well just be gone as Dude Man Bro puts him in the dirt. It's only Angry left to try and fend them off, but he's facing off against Chronic and Dude Man. And it's Dude Man Bro 429 with a 6-3-2 slash line.
Early on it was Nehu, now it's the Ola run. This has picked up a lot in the last couple of minutes. Double the kills ELYSIUM have been able to pick up, and if they had gotten rid of any of these towers at this point, that's game. Right then and there. They still have some time to work with. I mean, if they can burn through that tier 2, it's at minimum a Phoenix. You've got 30 seconds to work with, no carries, just tanks. This is a big deal for Sleekness.
They do have a minion wave right behind them. They could take this out quick. Trixtank goes in the back to keep the minions out and make sure they have to work for this Phoenix. But there's nobody to stop them from doing the damage to the Phoenix. They're just going to slam through, and Sleekness might just go for the end of the game here. Ultimate is up. It's a whale coming through. Make that 4 of them crossing the map, crossing through the Titan room, and Sleekness have enough damage to take this one down. And in 3 games, Sleekness are able to close out ELYSIUM to end the game and end the set.
I can't believe ELYSIUM's gone. That's it. That's the last game that they're going to be in. That blows my mind. A wildly successful year for them. I mean, top of Europe every single phase, winning all of their playoffs, things like that. And taken down in 3 games, no less, is impressive from Sleekness. Really good adaptation from that team, though. I have to gush about Sleekness here because the way that they are protecting their carries just feels like no other team that we saw today. The way that they were keeping everyone fluidly moving and the way that they played their team comps were really, really a big deal for them. So I think that was a very well-earned and hard-earned set for them overall, especially that last game. And I'm just impressed. And I'm excited to see what they're going to offer. They are really, really surprising. This is a 4th seed just like 3 months ago.
Yeah, 4th seed going into the circuit playoffs, number 1 seed coming out, have now sent the number 1 EU team that was dominating their own meta, dominating their own region. They've sent them packing here on day 1. We'll get to see them tomorrow, and we'll get to see the desk one more time before we close out our day.
You stop! Fido kick! Fido kick!
I gave up dabbing for Lynn.
Cool. No more dabbing for Final.
He looked at me and said, I'm going to be on that stage next year. I'm going to become a world champion.
Ripping through! Titan down, ball three! A double kill
Back-to-back 3-game sets, and this one is SLEEKNESS coming out ahead of ELYSIUM. The EU powerhouses bow out of the SWC qualifier tournament in their first matchup of the weekend. SLEEKNESS moves on, and they've got an SPL opponent waiting for them tomorrow. And it was games 1 and 2 where SLEEKNESS ran back very similar compositions. ELYSIUM did their best to adapt, but Mifflin, unfortunately, SLEEKNESS just had too many tricks up their sleeve. This one felt a little less eclectic as far as E-set support and Zeus mid and things like that. A little bit more straightforward, and it worked out all the same.
Yeah, as you called for, ELYSIUM bans out the E-set, and
That's
I get
right,
immediately vindicated by them still losing. So couldn't have just been the E-set that
we both
SLEEKNESS this win.
We're both right.
Wait,
I'm right because I called for it, and it happened.
Okay.
You're right because it didn't work. Because it didn't matter. Now consistency is the key for the SLEEKNESS team. Remember, and Miff, you set the stage so well pre-game for the SLEEKNESS team. An improvement over the course of the year. This SLEEKNESS at the beginning of Season 8 does not beat this ELYSIUM team in the way that they did today. Now SLEEKNESS starting to play with a little bit more confidence, a little bit more pressure. I think Oath had a fantastic set. Kleeno looked good here in game number 3. And we wondered how the Horus plus Olarun combo would work, Miff, and that was actually a decent point of pressure for SLEEKNESS throughout this game.
Yeah, and I stand by the statement I made earlier on the desk segment saying that SLEEKNESS legitimately has a much weaker 5-on-5 engagement than they did in previous games this set, but their pick potential was much higher. So kind of the name of the game changes for ELYSIUM in that they just need to withstand the early, they need to just survive it, and kind of utilize their scaling and then group up as 5 and play. ELYSIUM were not given that opportunity, though. They got picked, and then they got picked, and then they continued to get picked. There was a couple of moments of brief fight back from ELYSIUM. I believe it was the 4th kill at around the 8-minute mark for them, but after that, rather, it really slowed down, and only for one team, and that was ELYSIUM.
You know what, Miff? There's a world, because we're on this side of the bracket, there's a world where Awesome Jake 408 and Dude Man Bro 429 end up playing against one another in a matchup. I mean, a lot of things have to go that way. I was looking at the name Dude Man Bro 429 and the incredible game that he had. Top damage in the game. And his tag is Dude Man Bro 429. It's so unassuming, and then suddenly he puts you in the dirt on Olarun in the same way that Awesome Jake 408 lulls you into a sense of security and then runs you down. That is a duo lane matchup.
Isn't Jake's numbers, isn't that just like his area code?
All right, now
he's from the 408, right?
You're doxing
Jake. I doxed Jake. He put it in his IGN.
This is fantastic. Well, you're the one who connected the dots.
Dude Man Bro lives in the 429. Go find him.
I don't know where. Oh my God, that was ominous, Miff. I didn't like that at all. That said, SLEEKNESS moving forward later on into the weekend, they will be playing the Jade Dragons, as I mentioned, an opportunity to play up against the Bolts, but some things have to fall in order for SLEEKNESS to get there. Jade Dragons should be the favored team, needless to say, going into the matchup up against SLEEKNESS tomorrow, and then the Olympus Bolts will be playing against the Valhalla Valkyries. I stand corrected, not tomorrow, but later on this weekend. My brain just not functioning quite yet. The Olympus Bolts then will start off their run here in the World Championship placement round up against the Valhalla Valkyries. Both of those matchups taking place on Thursday will be in Group A tomorrow. And so if we want to see the 429 and the 408 matchup, the bracket will open your eyes a little bit into how that happens. If the Jade Dragons win, they'll move on. If the Valhalla Valkyries win, then we'll see a SLEEKNESS versus Bolts matchup a little bit later on. Talk to me, though, Miff, expectations. These matchups obviously happening on Thursday. I don't want to take any intrigue out of it. Feels like two very favored teams in both of those first two matchups here in Group B.
I think that, obviously, Valhalla Valkyries versus Olympus Bolts, we got plenty of data on that matchup, and we have seen the Olympus Bolts come out ahead just about every single time. But this SLEEKNESS versus Jade Dragons matchup, sure, you could say one's the favorite. The Jade Dragons clearly have had higher performing matches throughout the year. They've been playing at a different level of play. But what I have seen from Sleekness as of recent has been so impressive, I'm not willing to give Jade Dragons that much of a lead. If I were a bookie, maybe like 60-40 odds.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, there's a little bit of extra something in that matchup. I think the early games will give a good answer on how that set is going to go. That's Group B. Group A, as I've been misspeaking, Group A will be the one that starts up tomorrow, and that is Atlantis Leviathans versus Winter Dogs, and then the Solar Scarabs and the Oni Warriors. And those two, very important, of course, Myth, but really the Scarabs and the Oni Warriors, I think carry so much weight with it moving forward. Leviathans, of course, I think, similar to what you just said, Leviathans will be favored over the Winter Dogs. There's certainly some intrigue there. These are teams that have not played against one another, and so who knows. But Scarabs and Oni Warriors, you talk about two teams moving out of each group. It feels like if we're going just by seeding and expectations, Scarabs and Warriors would be the two teams fighting for that last spot. So keeping the road easy for yourself, staying on the upper end of this bracket here in Group A, very important. And so Scarabs versus Warriors, I think, carries a lot of weight.
Yeah, I think that's going to be one of the most important individual sets that we have throughout the entirety of this week. The Solar Scarabs up against the Oni Warriors could really spell the difference for the rest of this bracket going forward. And Atlantis Leviathans versus Winter Dogs, I got to say it. That one's a little bit more heavily favored to one team, in my mind, like 80-20.
And I think, after a little bit of a break, now we're starting to see how some of the favorites and the maybe outside shots at winning the Smite World Championship have spent their downtime. How do the teams look coming out of some downtime? All those questions and more will be answered throughout this weekend. Remember, we started today, we end on Sunday. We've got 5 more days, if I'm doing the math correctly, of placement round broadcasts. A lot of fun today. Unfortunately, we say goodbye to the Captain Odie fan club and ELYSIUM, but the other two opponents moving on to face some SPL opponents starting tomorrow. Remember, 11 a.m. tomorrow. You want to tune in, but on behalf of myself, Mifflin, all the other casters, everyone back in production, thanks for watching. We'll see you tomorrow.
Peach it.